Good evening, everyone. Slow down. Welcome to a regular meeting for the Hastings on Hudson Board of Education for February 10th, 2026. We're going to open up this evening with a very welcome and rare occurrence that happens usually in May, but with the tenure recommendation for Joseph Callaghy, a high school teacher in ELA. And I think Mr. Clayman's going to start, yeah? Welcome.
Are we on?
Yeah.
You might want to hold it close to your mouth just so that they can hear you at home.
A little tall for the stand over here. Good evening, Dr. McCursey, members of the Board of Education, and members of the Hastings on Hudson community. I'm here this evening to voice my strong and enthusiastic support for Joseph Callaghy's recommendation for tenure in the Hastings on Hudson School District. Since I arrived at Hastings last school year, I was immediately struck by Joe's deep commitment to student-centered instruction. His thoughtfully designed lessons seamlessly blend literary analysis with historical and cultural context, and his classroom environment is warm, supportive, and intentionally structured so that students feel safe to take intellectual risks. In Joe's classroom, students are challenged, but they know that they are never alone in that challenge. They know they have a caring, supportive teacher guiding them every step of the way. He's a talented, hardworking educator who consistently puts students first, and Hastings is truly fortunate to have him as part of our community. When you walk into Joe's classroom, you may initially have trouble finding him, and that's entirely by design. Joe embraces the philosophy of being the guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage. Joe's students are always actively intellectually engaged. They're working independently or collaboratively. They're closely reading texts. They're exploring historical context, and they're demonstrating their understanding through multiple modalities. At the heart of Joe's instructional practice is a genuine belief in a growth mindset. This belief is evident not only in the way he speaks to his students, but also in his careful lesson planning, his thoughtful assessment practices, and the meaningful feedback he provides. Now, this growth mindset is no accident, because at his core, Joe is a coach. Through his roles as a boys varsity coach and boys varsity soccer coach and boys modified baseball coach, he has made a profound impact on the whole child development of Hastings scholar athletes. He's guided students through the highs and lows of athletic seasons, teaching them perseverance, resilience, teamwork, and the value of good old-fashioned hard work. He understands that every individual matters and that each student contributes meaningfully to the success of the team. And that belief is just as present in his classroom as it is on the playing field. Joe Callaghy is a stellar educator. He is reflective, he's committed to continuous improvement, and he is dedicated to creating intellectually rigorous, responsive learning environments where students feel seen, valued, and coached to their highest potential. I recommend Joseph Callaghy for tenure without the least hesitation and with my strongest possible endorsement.
Thank you, Andy.
And in the formality of this process, I heartily accept the recommendation from Mr. Clayman. We had talked about it as Melissa Szymanski, Maureen, and others will join me in knowing we know Joe. We know this individual, Joe. And I think Andy's, Mr. Clayman's recommendation and Mr. Callaghy fully captured who he is. And let me just share one additional piece. Not only is he expert, he's patient. So he arrived here, as Mr. Wendell knows, is already a proven state-vying head soccer coach out of Westlake. And he arrives here as a football soccer guy. And he gets sick of me because I can't help but talk about, and even his wonderful spouse who's here already heard me lean in on the game. But he was patient. He came to a place with already a long-standing head coach, and he coached JV for a bit. And as someone who knows the game, I know that may be a tough decision, but Mr. Callaghy takes the long view. He does it in his classroom, he does it on the sports field, and even tomorrow morning he'll be in training sessions appropriately just to cultivate his players. So I recommend the board heartily endorse this tenure because this is a teacher, educator, person, individual of character taking a long view, and that's what we need in Hastings.
Thank you, Dr. McCursey. Is there a motion to approve Joseph Callaghan's motion for tenure?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Congratulations.
In June, Mr. Callaghan, you will need to say something. If you want to do a warm-up now, you're allowed, but you could wait till it's up to you.
I definitely can't reach this, so. Thank you to all the board, Dr. McCursey, Dr. Szymanski, my administrative team, Mr. Clayman and Ms. Ware and Mr. Wendell in the athletic department. The administrative team, since I've been hired, has been like beyond supportive of everything since day one. It's really cool to see two of my former 9th grade students here as representatives to the board. That's an incredible thing for them. Joaquin and I were just talking a few hours ago about soccer and about ways to improve our team for this coming fall season. It's really been a joy to be here at Hastings. After having seen many student bodies in a few schools that I've been at before Hastings, being around a student group that's as diligent and earnest as they are here is really just fun to be around, and I look forward to spending the rest of my career here. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I say, yeah, you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
I just remember we had a parent-teacher conference 3 years ago, I guess it would be, and somehow we got on the topic of what you wish was different in the middle school. I wasn't getting in trouble with anybody, and you said that you wish they did more writing in the middle school. And I remember thinking like that's exactly right, and it really warmed my heart, especially for somebody that works with 9th graders and handles that transition from younger kids. I think it's paradoxical, but having high expectations for children is one of the things that helps them succeed, and it's even in the New York State standards. And so I was very heartened. I remember that conversation very well, and I think you do a spot-on job of it. Hit all the marks that Principal Clayman detailed. So I don't see a lot in the classroom, obviously, but I'm so enthusiastic, and welcome aboard for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to also welcome you officially to Hastings in this capacity, and I say that it's a pleasure. I don't know you. We've never had a parent-teacher conference. But those days are long gone. But they were with English teachers who were soccer coaches. And I just want to say that you're really joining a wonderful community and joining a department that has for many years been a really solid, strong, great place for educating students. And I do love it that in addition to being an English teacher, you're a sports coach. To me, that's the whole picture. So welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Hope you go celebrate. All right. Open up another. Before we move on to the student report, I just wanted to let the community know that the administration will be exploring the steps necessary, both from a financial and personnel logistics standpoint, for the creation of a new administrative position, specifically the position of Director of Equity, Opportunity, and Belonging. More details will be forthcoming with hope to present more information in public as part of our March budget meetings. Moving on to student report. Hi Ella, hi Joaquin, how are you guys doing?
Hey everybody. Okay, so Academic Field Day is this Friday the 13th. I have never been at an Academic Field Day before. Maybe in the past we've had it, and this is my first one. So we get a half day, and for the second half after lunch, teachers are going to lead their own workshops that they themselves have designed. So there's one about the history of Coca-Cola, there's a badminton tournament, There's a dressing for men class, so I'm looking forward to it. Try to sign up with your friends. You get 3 each. Hopefully you get to, get your first and second and third choices. But all of them look super engaging and a lot of fun. Also, after that, Saturday or Sunday morning, Elle and I will both be getting up at 2:45 a.m. to catch the bus to JFK because we are going on the Columbia trip with Spanish. So we're going to go there. It's going to be language school in the morning, 3 groups based on your level, your proficiency in Spanish. And then after that, there's going to be a whole itinerary of activities. City tours, coffee tasting. There's a beach day at the end, which will be awesome. We are so looking forward to that. And we get back very late on a Sunday night, so hopefully no homework.
People are going, students?
I think 27, yeah.
Ooh. Maybe a little football?
Miss Bromberg and Miss Ware will also be there with us.
Of course.
So a little bit about the bathroom policies, actually. I can say when I first applied for the position, one of the things that I wanted to change or at least bring to attention was what was going on in the bathrooms. There was always, since freshman year, I was told don't go in the 3rd floor boys bathroom because there's always vaping in there. But I can say, this year things are very different. There have been aids and monitors and sign-in sheets. So there's been a big change in how we act as high schoolers in the bathroom, as we should act as young adults. And, from at least the boys' perspective, things are looking up. There's, everyone can use the bathrooms, safely. They don't feel pressure not to go, to wait for a single stall. But there is some, there are different perspectives. Like Ella, there have been some issues that she's brought up.
Thank you, Joaquin.
Yeah. So from the girls' perspective, many people have brought to my attention some terms such as long lines. So it used to be a rule where you can't go in with a middle schooler or there can't be more than 2 people in the bathroom at a time. And so this resulted in lines of people waiting outside the bathrooms, and you'd be running around trying to find an open bathroom, which would lead you to miss more class. So with that also, there are people who experienced aides coming into the bathrooms and kicking people out. And so this also, there are some more issues in terms of equity where girls were on their cycles and they were forced to wait outside the bathrooms, which would lead to them need to go home to change, or if people there wasn't access to menstrual products in the bathrooms because they're not regularly refilled. And then we then met with Mr. Clayman and Ms. Ware to discuss this, and they were incredibly receptive of the issues that we brought up. And of course it's changed now since there are no monitors, since they did come from the middle school. So we learned that the reason they were here is because they did not have a place to go, and so the high school was really only decision since they still worked here. And so with this, we are discussing if there's any sort of instance where there could be a change or a re-implementation of the bathroom policy. Siri, who is also, Siri Rosenberg, she was also at the meeting, and Joaquin will be first to know, and we'll discuss with Ms. Ware and Mr. Clayman on what best actions is to do. And we are also currently working with Ms. Ware on ways to improve the menstrual products that are available in the girls' bathrooms. So we're looking at different brands, seeing how we can get the janitors to also restock them on a daily.
Excellent.
And sorry, this is a really helpful update. Thank you so much, both of you. In terms of the bathroom, is there a consensus about what you'd like to see, or are you still in the process of figuring that out?
Well, for now, it's more so focused on the menstrual products, since now we have more freedom, so we're seeing how high schoolers will respond to this, and hopefully none of us will take advantage of this opportunity. And so obviously if there was an issue going around, I think we definitely need to relook at the policy to see how can we make this more equal in terms of how the boys' bathrooms are treated versus the girls.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all.
I just wanted to add that the Latin students are also embarking on a vacation, a learning extravaganza during that break, and they're leaving Valentine's Day. And this particular trip is going to involve glass blowing, trips to historical sites, and actually there was an option to choose shopping, and instead of shopping, the students wanted to do a culinary experience. So they are firmly focused on spending their February vacation break on experiencing culture in Italy. So that's happening, I think, the day before you all depart for your trip,
yeah.
right?
Are they going to Rome or Venice?
They're going, so the trip is to Rome, Venice, Florence, Assisi, Sorrento, and I think a side trip to Pompeii, too.
In 1 week?
Yes.
Wow.
It is a whirlwind historical excursion, cultural immersion, and it's, there's, unlike this trip, which is centered in one location and immersive, Latin chose to do the cultural experience, and it's by bus, so there's frequent stops and frequent traveling. And this group is being combined with another group from South Carolina. So there's going to be an opportunity for new friendships and new connections, and
That's very cool. Thank you. I guess we'll hear the report on how it went in a couple of weeks, right? Thank you both. Moving on to one of the presentations tonight, we're going to provide an update to the community and to the board on the different turf options. Are we going to put this on the screen? Or?
Well, it's posted here. I don't know if we have it to go up on the screen. I can read through it, then I think maybe, Alex, if you want to reinforce a few things, and then Maureen can reinforce. But
So as everybody knows, we put together specifications that were part of the bond, language that was part of the bond, which detailed the turf and installation. We met 3 times, I guess, with various turf suppliers to show them what the community had actually voted upon and to understand how their various products could meet those bid standards. And after the series of meetings, Bob McKinnon, who you might recall is the landscape architect that the district's been working on, worked to follow up details, to chase down references, and to ensure that the actual bid specs, which Maureen will go into, match the goals as laid forth in the bond language. So is that fair to say?
yeah, I can jump in now. So what you have before you in the document posted publicly is an introduction to the process. There have been no particular vendors interacted with as it relates to any contracts or all. It's just sort of fact-finding, understanding what's out there in the market. I would say that that LA Associates, LA Group Associates, and Bob Kiernan have been incredibly invaluable in this process. And Mr. Wendell's here as there need to be questions, but you've got his expertise, Ms. Carbella's expertise, my own and others, but it's critical that you have someone that this is their entire profession and can reach quite broadly and widely around some different, over 1,000 different installations, understanding the evolution of what's happening with turf. So very, very important, as the memo says, is that we started with the items, the specifications draft that you as a board grappled with in the spring, and they became quite important to all of you as well as to Hastings residents as to the standards that will be set. And now what you before you is 10 of the most pivotal issues for the specifications that will be in the bid, and then those are listed with the number 1. Below it in the black italics, bolded black italics, is the update. So for example, you had insisted in specs number 1 that it not consist of any rubber-based products, ideally organic or mineral. So now we can clearly say the specifications will require to note that only organic, mineral, or mix of the two will be allowed. Rubber infills are prohibited. And indeed, there's one product that while the inside would have been defensible, the outside is acrylic. So we looked at that and understood that would not be passable here in Hastings. While near us, they have adopted that as an essentially an organic. But we ourselves in Hastings will say that would not be allowed through the specs. 2, tough type. We look closely what would work for an all-purpose field, and this is where Mr. Wendell's been particularly important, in that the multi-purpose has to provide well for boys and girls lacrosse, field hockey, softball. That would be a separate field, boys and girls soccer, football and flag football. So there's specifications here, again, working through the market, working what's out there to basically set us up, we hope, once the public bid goes out to compete for these type of specifications, and they're listed here. Number 3, tuft height. Again, we looked at that relative to multi-purpose fields as well as the softball field. And you can see the range of height here is what's seen as is appropriate and necessary for this range of sport, but that range allows us to bring to you ultimately recommendations. So let me step to the side. You're not voting on these specifications, you vote on the ultimate vendor that we will bring to you that's won this bid. We just want to let you know what will be in the bid. Shot continuation, very, very important. Thinking through what the depth of that particular turf is, pads, etc., so that it's the safest field possible. Number 5, permeability. This is quite significant. There's been concern about whether the rainwater or other precipitation would roll off and go down into watershed areas, but actually this is designed to absorb it, and at a 30 inches per hour, that is extreme. Usually we're looking at 5 to 6 inch storms per hour being ones that shut us all down. And you know that we have an expert in Michael Schlechter in our community who's truly, that's his career's work, and as he would say that once you're into a 5 or 6 per hour rainstorm, you're in trouble. So this is actually designed to handle 5 times that amount. And you may remember, different from the turf, that the whole structure is a lot of it will get absorbed down into what is a natural catchment area. 6, very important, minimum warranty of 12 years. NICE said it really helps right now. New York State itself is insisting on pretty strict requirements which will benefit us. 7, very, very important. We did not talk about this in the spring, but per New York State, it's not just that when the pad is no longer and the turf is no longer usable that it just is discarded in a landfill. No, no, no. By requirement, it has to be repurposed. So every vendor, we will look at that. They have to certify that, if you will, from A to Z, beginning of life to end of life, it'll be repurposed, not simply put in a landfill. 8 is very, very important, manufacturer qualifications. We want firms that have a record of working quite substantially and also within the public school world and within New York State, and have done quite a significant volume amount of installations. Lead, number 9, that's been standard for a while, but they'll require certified letter stating that the synthetic turf does not contain lead or components. And then 10, there's a lot of discussions about PFAS. What we will insist on is a certified letter saying it does not contain or been treated with PFAS. So these are the 10 of the most significant specifications. The actual bid document will be 10 to 12 to 15 pages of detail, but these are the 10 most important ones right now as we think about health and well-being of our student athletes, and we think about environmental considerations. So I don't know, Maureen, if you want to add anything. Again, this is not for you to vote on tonight. You will vote on the ultimate recommended vendor and have plenty of time to engage with whom that firm is. So I don't know if you want anything, and then I know Mr. Wendell's here wants anything, but go ahead.
The only thing I wanted to add is that this particular list was reviewed by our attorney as well to ensure that it would be, bid compliant and that there was nothing in here of any concern, and that there were other reviews of other, as Bill said, this is one part of a much larger bid and how the bid is structured and all the rest. And we had another conference call today with Stephanie because we do have a permit. We can start our bidding process. That project's already been approved by New York State. So we are at that phase and where we will be putting out a bid within the next month or so on this project.
Okay. I just want to open up for any questions, comments. Oh, Drew.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. I just want I'm here if you have questions.
Okay.
Yeah, Drew's here. Drew was in the meetings that we had. Some good points as well. So, any questions?
Like, as you said, part of the bid too, which is not, this is the design, not design, but the colors that are selecting, and Drew's been pivotal because of all the different sports that have to be played and how, all that. So that, of course, will be part of the larger specification, but this is really to do with the environmental pieces.
I would just note that Drew did some good legwork, and I appreciate it. You're well connected to a lot of the ADs, a lot of different types of fields, and we've got a lot of good information, like boots on the ground information.
Yeah,
So at some
that's
point,
good.
we'll bring that up
Yep.
in further depth. Okay. Thank you very much.
What are the next steps with this?
Well, the next steps is we will be issuing the bid. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Maureen.
the bid, as I said, we already have full approval from New York State to proceed with the bid of this project, which we anticipate will be within the next month or so. Again, in terms of when the work would begin, we'd anticipate the end of June, that the work would be awarded sometime in May. So the bid goes out, it's out for 30 to 60 days. They come back in, they're reviewed, they're open, they're reviewed, they're awarded by the Board of Ed. And then after that, we would anticipate, part of the bid is the ability to start their work at a certain time frame and finish it in a certain time frame. But I know they had a logistics meeting with the construction manager just to start discussing, what we anticipate. So come the summer, those fields would be offline to begin the work.
And to be clear, the board approves the actual
Yes,
contract,
yes.
so there'd be very much activity with you in terms of either the lead winning,
Yeah.
but for you to review that and decide.
And the
And
construction.
that all gets done in public meetings and public discussion.
Right, and the construction manager, who is the board representative in this process, they review, the whole team is at the opening, but they're the ones who really review, and then we ensure it meets all the bid compliance. It's reviewed by our legal team, and then brought to the board for approval at that point. But there's a vetting process even beyond opening the bids. You have to, everyone, all the contractors are interviewed and references checked and all the rest. So there's a pretty rigorous process once the bids are open prior to it being presented for award.
Thanks, Marie. Thanks. All
I
right.
will also just say, after this process, you guys are picking, letting us bid, that we have been meeting with coaches and everyone, stakeholders around, so the aesthetics of it and everything else would be, we're getting a lot of, it's not just us making the decision
Right.
on that. So this process right now is just getting the ball rolling.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Drew.
Yeah, Drew's going to have his work cut out from next year. I don't want to say too much about the logistics. He's not going to want to talk.
I can imagine,
It's going
for
to be
sure.
a lot come the fall, but
Yeah.
we'll have to figure out some alternate fields.
Oh, my, yeah.
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 Connections coming from.
Oh, yeah, exactly. We cash those in. Thanks, Drew. Thanks. Thank you, Marie. Okay. We're going to move on to one of the highlights tonight, the budget overview. We're going to examine the non-instructional budget.
Clicker?
um,
Oh, yes,
which is-
we are.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the clicker.
And that's mainly like transportation. We're going to talk about fund balances.
Yeah, so,
Right.
so this evening, we'll be presenting the overview of the non-instructional budget. And just for those who are, or may not recall or not remember, all districts, this is how districts do present their budgets. This is not only Hastings, but others. The first part, it's broken down into the non-instructional component, although much of what is included in this area of the budget does support instruction, right? Because transportation is directly for students, and undistributed, this is the way that the state defines the various components, and we present it in that way. So, do you want me to just kick it off, Bill? Okay. So yes, so tonight our goal is to present a budget that maintains a strong educational programming while remaining fiscally responsible. So tonight, you'll see the overview up here, and we'll just hit on a couple of these things, the goals. Up top, we're going to really start off with looking at our budget history and five-year plan, and as well as the reserves, as you mentioned, Alex, because this is really an important step in understanding the entire budget process and about the sustainability and what decisions we're making for this year's budget and the impact that will have in our future years as you're deliberating this budget this year. So again, this is just part of the document of the purpose of the budget, and again, this has not changed from last year, and all of these are how we structure our budget and how we prioritize the support of the budget. And again, each year we want to ensure we're able to provide all resources needed for all of our students, and to ensure that all the programs that we have are addressed. So again, today we're going to start off with really reviewing our 5-year projections. And again, this is a really important part of this process, because I really think, how can you make any decisions or understand what is being presented to you without understanding the long-term impacts of that? So I just wanted to start off with speaking about, give me one second. On here, the budget history. And I did present this last year as just, and it is a very long history of the budget, but I do think it's important because it kind of just shows you the ebbs and flows of how the budget at different times, or the taxes in the village, and the impact of how budgets have doubled and quadrupled over time. So in the early 2000s, the district saw some very significant budget increases, as you can see here. And again, this is just a reminder. This is really prior to the tax cap being instituted in New York State, which has only been around for about 10 years or so. And you can kind of see very early on. And I just want to add in here, and I don't have the enrollment data, but this was not a time of, there were some years of some significant growth, but overall it was really just very high budgets. I mean, there was, at that time, health insurance costs were very historically low, pension costs were historically low, but yet the budget at that time was growing exponentially. And as we can see, since that time, the financial landscape has changed with stronger controls, and we put in some long-term planning and introduction, of course, of the tax cap in New York State that has really, I think you'll see that reflected in how then, as you can, I think I have an asterisk there, 2012-13 year was the first year of the tax cap. Now, prior to that, with the financial downturn, you'll see we did start making some adjustments, because as we all know, starting in like 07, 08, the world was a different place, or, and you can see where from going from in the 04, 05 budget to 11 and 12% budget to budget increases, we were down at 2 and 3%. And that really, really since that time, we've really put a lot of effort into balancing financial responsibility with the needs of the school and the community. So I do think this is important as we look, because, and as we talk about our 5-year plan, you can see that we have done a very good job in trying to keep our budget to budget increases low, but the costs are exceeding, are growing at a very rapid way that is making it very difficult for us to stay within the tax cap parameters. So as you can see this year, our current 26-27 budget, where it sits relative to last year, and that is showing a 4% increase, 4.41% increase, and that comes with just right underneath a 3% tax levy increase, which is tax cap compliant. Now going into the 5-year plan. Now the last few, mic issue. Is there an issue with people here? Okay, I'm sorry. I just got an email from somebody. Okay. As we look at the 5-year projections, the last couple meetings, I had not updated them to reflect now our current budget proposal and blowing it out. And tonight we're really, in the beginning of the meeting, I think it is very important before we get into the non-structural component, which is relatively simple. We really do focus our attention on these numbers and what our projections are looking at going out into the next 4 to 5 years after this upcoming budget. And as you can see, highlighted on the bottom, you can see where we currently are sitting, and we're at about a $65 million proposal on the budget, which is approximately a 4.51% increase over the prior year. But as you can see, even at what we consider the low projection, and what that really means is that our health insurance doesn't come in at the highest level, it comes in around 7 or 8% rather than 10 or 11. So we're being optimistic and saying even if if we're able, or the next few years, the rates of which we're paying on employee benefits and salaries, and if inflation comes down a bit, and we don't have any major increases in costs or additional students that we may come into the district that we may have additional expenses related to, even with that, the 27-28 budget would grow by 7%. And that's just really based upon, well, it's based on two factors. We are going to be issuing debt, right? So that's one of the pieces we have to factor in to that 27-28 and beyond, right? Where in the 26-27, we will be issuing a bond at the end of this year, which is a bond anticipation note. So there's a small amount of interest in next year's budget relative to that. But then the year after, we're going to be taking on some of that larger debt onto our budget. So that represents, potentially somewhere in that 2.5% of that, or 2% of that increase is related to bond debt payments coming on in the 27-28. And you can see that, but our normal budget growth is about 5 or 6%. We only got it down to 4.51% because we're adding some things, we're also removing some things. And we also had this is the first year we are benefiting from some of those retirees and the replacement, but then once you get that first year savings, then the next year it's growing yet again. So as we think about what we're going to be presenting tonight, and when we present our instructional budget, keeping that in mind, that in order even to present a 4.51% growth, it required us to remove some items as well. Things that we believe are driven by enrollment and by reduction of some positions outside of the teaching realm for the most part, but some of our support positions in order to get the budget to fall within the tax cap parameters. But as you can see in next year's budget and the year after, at the best case scenario, it's a 7%, increase. It could be even higher than that. This is not factoring in if you had an increase of enrollment, if you had an increase of busing costs, if you had an increase of additional teaching staff needed for anything. So I think that's why we really need to be keeping this in mind as we say, hey, we may have to trim this back. It's like anything that we add back in, we're going to have to replace with a reduction. And the next slide that's much more important is looking at the revenue side. So the expenditure side is one of it. Actually, I think pretty remarkable. We came in with a budget that's only increasing 4.51%. Well, we're also, and we'll talk about it during the instructional budget, we are increasing significantly our special education staffing. I mean, we had to make some other adjustments elsewhere, but we are able to address and grow program K-12 and special ed, even with that budget, and coming in at what it is. But the revenue side of the equation and I've showed you this number when I showed you what we're recommending in terms of fund balance allocations. In order to get it to a tax cap compliant budget, we had to move in a significant increase in fund balance. And we did use a decent amount this last year as well. But in order to balance it, we did have to increase our allocations out of there. Just note that bottom, that's not 276 anymore, it's actually 298 on the tax rate, because it includes the debt service for the ban. So I'll have to I didn't realize I didn't update that slide. But what I really want to discuss is we know what we're proposing for 26-27, but we do need to keep in mind, and this is, again, as we talk about things that people potentially may want to add to the budget in future years, with nothing added to the budget, you're looking at a 27-28 tax rate increase of a minimal of 6%. It could be 7%, so we really do need to be thoughtful about, once we pass this bond and some of those things, that is going to require us to have some fiscal constraint, because even if there was a willingness to override, you do have to think about the impact of, like, are we going to, double or go up 25% in taxes in 3 years? I mean, that would not be sustainable for this village. So I say that to say, best case scenario, we're looking at a 6% or so increase in taxes. It could be closer to 7 or 8%. So really keeping in mind that we really want to be able to stay at the tax cap this year, that will require us to be very fiscally conservative moving forward. And really with the mindset that anything that people may think we want to add, no matter how small it may seem, we're going to have to remove something in order to afford it. And then again, as you look at the 28-29 budget, and I also then want to speak to some other numbers in there. So let's just stay on the 27-28 budget. It's a 6% increase, and we would still have to reduce expenses because we still have a budget gap there because we're not able to allocate as much fund balance. So I'm assuming here that with the tax cap levy of $3 million, which is basically a 2.7% tax cap, something I'm just assuming it'd be similar to this year, and then adding in the allowable debt we're allowed to add into that tax number, but that doesn't account for, we still don't have enough money to balance our regular budget there. So that's why that number of 1.9 million on the bottom is highlighted. We would still have a deficit model with that. And in order, yes.
So just to be clear, when a district takes on new debt, New York State gives us an allowable increase in the tax levy, an exception to the cap, only that year.
Well,
So-
each year, I mean, it's always it's debt minus state aid is the calculation.
Well, I guess so that's the way it works. So 6.25 would still be state under the tax cap.
Correct.
Right. And even so, if we taxed to the cap next year,
It would be like 6%. Yeah,
and we would
6%.
still have a $1.2 million revenue shortfall taxing to the cap.
Correct.
Okay. Just want to clarify that.
So this is helpful, right? And this is, I think, for the community to hear everyone, right?
Yes.
Families, community members, teachers, right? Like these are important numbers to know, especially if there's a real push. And what we've heard from community members is there's a real push to stay underneath the tax cap. So my question for you is, what do districts do in this situation? Like, how do we go back and look and take fresh eyes at what we have, what we could cut, we could not cut? Like, what have you seen as best practice in times like these?
Well, I will say two things. I think different districts have done a few overrides, so I think everyone handles it a bit different. I know I was at a meeting on Friday, this past Friday with the legislators, and again, when we look at review the revenue again, you'll see that although there is an increase in state aid, it's not able to really keep up with what expense increases that we're seeing. So in just speaking to some colleagues, I know some districts are on their like third override of a budget because their thinking is if, they're not so worried about the override, they're worried about the overall like impact on taxes long term. So depending on what their tax rate is at any given year, sometimes an override may mean going up 1 or 2%. So some of them take a strategy, we're going to do an override for 3 years that we're going to go 2% over cap. Others may we need to make reductions to stay under cap. I mean, I think it really depends on the district and what the impact to their taxes are. So I would say, one of the things I do think we would need to consider, because there is a point in which sometimes the tax cap's unrealistic to be able to stay under. And I would say that although as we look out, I believe that in 28-29, you would need to add a little bit of you'd have to override the cap at a certain level, because then you're just decimating your budget every year if you're not doing that. Because we're at a point we're using a good amount of our reserves. The amount of the health insurance in particular and the benefit costs have not, in the last 3 or 4 years, have really been quite significant, and that's putting a real squeeze on us. So I think that's what a lot of districts, why some of our neighboring districts have gone for overrides. Now, the other side of it is some districts also have large growth factors each year. So within the Quad Village, this year we can only legally levy 2.89 with the ban exception, where other people, their tax cap compliant number is 5%. So I think there's a lot of different pieces, but what I will say is I do think here that we may need to override in a couple years, but I think the amount of the override, you have to be realistic, it really can't be more than 2%, because I think overall we are taking on a lot of debt. You do have to look at the balance of that. We have facilities needs. That means we, on the operations side, need to be mindful of that, not decimate things, but be willing to kind of try to make us be as efficient as possible. I think last year, that's why I don't want to repeat last year, but I mean, each year we do have a responsibility to review what we're offering, what our enrollments are, what things are not as efficient as others, and as needs change, we sometimes may need to make adjustments that sometimes people will not be happy with that we may need to make. And I think as time goes on, I think last year we were able still to make the adjustments and pull more fund balance and deliver it, but there is a point that it either we have to increase the taxes or we have to make, I mean, it's either one or the other.
Right.
And I would say it's probably a combination of both. You know, it's not taking all the cuts, but it's not like doing a major override. It's something, doing a measured approach, like maybe you do 1 or 2%, but it's really about educating people to say, you know, as we look out, you know, we're mindful of the taxes, but we think we may need to increase it, you know, if the tax cap is, I'm making it up, in 4%, maybe you do go 6%. I know it is 6%, but it's what you lose with those 2% that we really need for people to understand and say, you know, we're trying to, you know, this year by doing so, then we're hoping then the years after that we can be at that 3.5% again. You know, because some years you need to go up a little bit to kind of increase your revenue so that then moving forward, you know, it should then level out for a few more years. But again, all of us are hoping for, when I say all of us, my colleagues and myself, we're hoping for some relief in the in what we're seeing with health insurance costs. I mean, that's not anything the legislators really, they're saying that we can't do anything about it, and they themselves are meaning even as state employees, they have, you know, like that's a problem for all. But I think, you know, as this is a way to kind of set, as we talk about things that will come up, you know, where we are currently, and, you know, some of it I don't want to keep going back and speaking about history, but as we looked at that budget history, you know, one of the things, we did have a failed budget not so long ago, and that is $1 million each year less in tax revenue, which right now would be about $4 to $5 million more that we would have in our reserves, which this would look very different because we would have more money than, say, next year I would have $2 million or 1.5 more million to put in that as we're taking on the debt, right? That's what, when districts have a little bit more in reserves, when they're taking on more debt, they're able to strategically use it to like help with, you know, just to kind of level off some of the increases and things like that. So, you know, passing a budget is extremely important. Making sure people understand what's at risk when you don't is very important. And then being strategic about, you know, and I think that's the point of having the finance committee meeting. I think it's really to kind of start mapping out, to Catherine's question, how then, as we think if things are pretty much, if they were to remain kind of what we're projecting here, how would we go about it? You know, would we start thinking about building in a tax override in a year or two? If so, at what rate? What other things should we be looking at, either also making some reductions or trying to find ways to, you know, meet that in the middle, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, by the way, Catherine. I think it's a great one, and thank you, Maureen. One of the central concerns, I think, would be, if we're discussing an override, you would not, under any circumstances, want to have it in 27, 28, because in that year you're going to have a allowable increase just past simple majority. Mm-hmm. And if you were to put an override on the table, you're putting that entire sort of jump up at risk. And we have a sort of another version, repeat of what happened 5 years ago, where the 1 year where we were allowed to expand, it doesn't work. So it's particularly risky to consider an override 27, 28, from my perspective.
Yeah, that's why I kind of have it in 2029. Now that still leaves a challenge for next year to instill. We have some time, things could change, you can get some breakage in different areas. You know, each year is different, and you know, but again, just kind of looking at the numbers, and you know, especially with using increased fund balance the last few years, and having like a little bit of a lower base, I think we're kind of getting to that point where the override, I mean, even next year we would have a challenge ahead of us, because we likely would have to figure out a way to address the revenue shortfall. Like, there may be things, maybe we'll get some expenditure savings next year that we're not aware of currently. You know, in revenues, sometimes some of the revenues could be coming a bit higher. And when we go into detail with our revenue projections for next year, I'll kind of highlight why numbers are being projected at one number, some are coming up, some are going down, and, you know, thinking about them each individually, because some of them, for schools, the only two true things you can rely on are school taxes and the state aid. Other things like interest income, as we talked about, I mean, the interest rate, as much as it's great when they cut it for people to buy homes, you also, we're making a lot of money on our interest income. That where a few years ago, this year we're making $700,000. 6 years ago we made $35,000.
Yeah.
So that's a good source of revenue for us. But that's also, at times, if the interest rates were to be cut in the next few years, that could potentially even go down, so just things like that. Those are items that they're great while they're there. We're anticipating we'll receive them for the next few years, but they're more volatile, some of those revenue sources. So kind of now jumping now to the, connected to what we just spoke about, our reserves projection. And again, this, as you can see, and we'll just go right to the, where we ended June 30th of 2025. And, again, we had a slight growth of reserves in our year over 2024 to 25. And this was something that was spoke about at length with the legislators. And a lot of my colleagues were like, we need more access to more reserves, and all the rest of them thinking, yeah, I would have liked that a few years ago. Right now, I don't have money to put into them, so that would be great. But that being said, they do understand, and it has been great, because if without those, it really, especially in the tax cap, has helped districts when they've had lower tax cap compliance numbers in certain years to be able to strategically pull out of your reserves in order to balance your budgets. And for us, it's been very helpful for us. And also, there's a lot of our reserves are actually tied to true liabilities. So they're not just money to offset budgets. There are sometimes represent like liabilities the district, legal liabilities the district has. So just kind of looking at the end of the last school year, we're anticipating bringing down our fund balance by about $2 million from, which is not terrible, from the end of the fiscal year last year to what we're projecting at the end of the fiscal year this year. Now, not to overly complicate it, much of, on the bottom half of the pages, combination, part of that $12 million total is what you're projecting to allocate to future years. So if you're unable to replenish that, that's how you see those like larger drops year over year. So again, just kind of looking out, you can see how with having a budget that's tighter, the ability to replenish your reserves is not there, right? Because as we budget closer to what our actuals or we're cutting in or being a little bit tighter, that means there's less money typically left at the end of the year, which means that you're using your reserves, but you're unable to replenish. So that's why, as currently, without knowing 100% in what's going to happen, you'll see by even 2027, from the end of 05 to 27, we're anticipating about a $5 million drop in fund balance. Now, one of the things that I am a bit concerned about, and that's why, for this year, we should be okay with our borrowing, but the amount of reserves you has ties directly to the rate you can borrow. And we are rated by Moody's, and bringing down our fund balance, even when it makes me a little nervous that, especially if we issue a bond in June 27, I may not be able to ban another year, because if we go further, then we're risking an interest rate increase by having such low reserves. So even speaking to my financial advisor, which I had a brief conversation with him, he was like, you got to be careful. And I know that just because that's how we're rated by Moody's. And actually, unlike municipalities, we're only allowed to keep 4% of unappropriated fund balance, where they're allowed to keep 15%. But we actually suffer from ratings. Unlike municipalities can borrow at better rates because they do have more fund balance as part, legally they're allowed to keep more, and they do have more than, say, we're allowed to keep with a much larger budget. So,
I'm sorry, but do you anticipate us going for the ban?
Well, I have to borrow a ban now this year,
Right,
because we're starting to do work. But, we had discussed which potentially rolling 2 bans, so doing a ban in 26, a ban in 27, and then bonding in 28. Potentially. It depends.
So the bond doesn't get priced, the bond doesn't get rated by Moody's. It's based on current financial information at the time of the rating.
Yes.
Okay, that's
so I'm borrowing a ban this year, which we should be fine, right?
Yeah.
And then, I'm just saying, but we do have to be mindful of that, like, because there is a direct correlation. That's actually the only way you're rated, is by your reserves. I mean, they know we have tax dollars. I mean, we're pretty safe bet either way. But when they get your, I mean, again, we have a good debt rating, but if we were to, potentially like really drop, that may, impact it, and it could be a 1%, on the margin of.
Do you know what rating we had on the previous bond?
AA2.
AA2? And do you know, just sort of colloquially, when you go between the different levels, what vague
I
are
think
you?
it probably could be like 5 basis points, right? Like
Each one,
0.5.
each step?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. But again, that's just something that's
Yeah.
just like the rule of thumb. I don't want to be scare tactics, but not only for that reason, you do need to have reserves. You can have, this is also, we rely on this. If something were to come up, we do need to have some ability to address it mid-year, and that we do rely on having like this money to, like as an example, like the flood, if we didn't have that property loss reserve, we would have had a major issue, the insurance reserve. That really, without that would have been coming right out of our operational budget. So, as we look at this, again, it's very important as we deliberate the budget, like there may be, even for me, I've just looked at it a million times, like, do you put it at $50,000 more from reserves? I'm like, we are tapped out, like we should not take one more nickel out of that. So there may be things that come up where people may say, hey, well, why are we changing that, or why wasn't this included? Each decision will require an adjustment. So as you can see, we want to be mindful of our reserves.
And the drop in insurance reserves, which you note from June 30th, 25.
Yeah, 'cause we're using
That's
it.
right. We used
Yeah.
it on the building, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, so some of it, I mean, yes, and it is there for, again, similar with the capital projects reserve. I mean, that's based upon anticipating like little projects we'll do. And I'll discuss one of them with you as part of this budget proposal. The ones that we're really, I'm most concerned about is I don't want to deplete our retirement system contributions. I just want to be mindful of how much we're using out of that. Because currently we have a decent balance in that, but we're anticipating using a lot to balance next year's budget and the year after. And without being able to replenish them, they may not even, we may deplete them. So we just need to be mindful of that. Okay, so as far as this upcoming budget at a glance, as I mentioned before, 4.4% budget to budget change with, we're at currently a legal tax levy growth of 2.98, and the proposed tax rate is actually coming out negative, but that really is related to the increase in the assessment in the town. So that in no way, shape, or form are we suggesting that this budget is going to have your taxes are going to go down. It's just, we just always put what the actual tax rate is. We've gone over these before. They're really here just for the record. I don't need to state them, but they're the same as for us as they are for any other district, the things that drive your budget costs, and they're in kind of order of the impact. No, this one I do have in here, and I did go over it again last year, and these are things just as we're deliberating our current budget that we're working on, other things that could happen between tonight and by the time the board adopts the budget or when the voters vote on it. Other things, I'm pretty confident this year we're good with state aid funding, but that's really speaking more to the future. Like, will the historic high levels of state aid that all school districts in New York have received in the last 3 years, will that be something we can rely on in those out years of our 5-year projections? Which, I mean, currently I am projecting that we will receive it, but there's always a little bit of concern around that in New York State. Changes in enrollment, this is more timely things. If we were to have more students come in at any grade level or any area that we weren't anticipating and potentially needing to break a section, that's something we'll be keeping, we always keep our eye on, but that is not an unusual thing to have happened here. So we have seen where we've had to add a section late. I mean, the problem really is we're designing our budget really not to have many unknowns happening. So, we're going to really be keeping our eyes on that. And again, special education, a new student into the system, a student that between now and early next year may need a change in services. So these are things that have, I would say, can have a significant impact on the budget. And these are things that are still, unknown to us at this time. There may be some unknowns. And again, we're not going to go over these. We're going to really just speak to 3 areas of the budget we're going to be covering tonight, which are the general support, the transportation, and the undistributed. And then on the March 17th meeting on St. Patrick's Day, with the green slides, we'll be going over the instructional part of the budget. Okay. So again, you've seen this before. There is one slight change on this budget overview, and that is that the last time I presented, the anticipated tax levy change was at 2.76. At that time, I didn't have the final ban interest number in there, which is tax cap compliant added in. So right now, we're looking at what we believe to be closer to about a 3% tax rate increase to support this budget. And I will go through in greater detail the revenues when I present the detailed revenues later this evening. So again, this is just, we've went over this slide before, and I just kind of pulled it into this presentation as well. And it kind of just speaks how quickly that dollar over budget dollar increase, we kind of start out, and even prior to adding or contemplating anything being added to the budget, we're kind of looking at about a $3 million budget growth year over year. And then we make adjustments. And again, we're not presenting this tonight, but I just wanted to remind the board, as part of the total dollar amount we're spending, that although I'll speak to a few reductions this evening or adjustments, in our total budget proposal, we did a lot for FTE increase in the area of special education. You can see how that breaks out. One of the things that is not included, but we did mention it to the board, that we do always ask people to bring additional budget proposals to us from the building levels and from all the departments, and those are not included in our current budget as you see it, but those totaled about $1.2 million, and that is not included. And I keep repeating myself over and over, any new items that are added to the budget, we would need to find other efficiencies in order to make sure that it's sustainable. These are just a couple small highlights. A reminder, we did include some interest payment for a bond anticipation note that we anticipate borrowing in about June of this year. There is $150,000 capital transfer to do some small projects in the building. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we are using an increase of reserves to balance this year's budget. This, again, is just a graphical representation of how we spend our money. It changes slightly year over year, but this graph looks almost the same for every district in Westchester County, where most money, of course, is spent in salary and benefits, as it is a people organization. Okay, so now we're going to just get into the different categories that are covered under what the state considers the general support part of the budget. So as you can see, most of the line items, and if you have a particular question, and within the budget book you'll receive a week or so after the instructional budget, these are broken out into even greater detail, but for presentation purposes, this is how we always present them within the different department codes. And of course, within each of these line items, there are several lines, in some of the departments, but I can speak to kind of some of the highlights in each department. The Board of Education, for anyone out there, no one's here getting paid. These are just for just to clarify that. No, but these are things that, again, it's just like any chart of accounts. There's certain expenses that are required to be captured within certain areas. These are for such things as running the annual budget vote, for board docs, for memberships in Putnam, Northern, Westchester BOCES, for our policy subscriptions, all things such as that. And again, primarily running votes is part of a larger part of that expense. Also, the district clerk is required, that salary portion of it is required to be reported in that area, as they are a clerk to the board. Chief School Administration, that's the superintendent's office. It includes salaries to the superintendent and his executive assistant, and it also has some supplies and things to support that office. Finance is for the business office, and that includes the 6 people who work in there. And it also has the cost for all our compliance, such as our internal, external auditors, our compliance on our cafeteria plans, and any of that other that we, to do our fixed assets. There's different things we have to have external people come in and do the work within. So all of those expenses are captured in here, and the increases here are primarily based upon salary increases and some small contractual increases within those codes. Legal, personnel, and public info. This is one area we're proposing a reduction. The legal cost is actually going up, and again, when we have the breakdown of the budget, you can see we're experiencing some. Our legal costs are based. There's a retainer, but then that only captures certain hours, and probably it's almost impossible. It's nothing we're doing. It's just that we just have to call our legal counsel. Our legal expenses have been increasing, have been up the last few years. I made a slight adjustment there. But one of the areas, and this was not something we did lightly, but in order to find efficiencies within our budget, we're proposing a restructuring of the personnel function, because since that person has been out and retired, people in my office have picked up a lot of that work, although we're instead of replacing it with a full-time position, we're proposing to replace it with a part-time position and redistribute the work across, because we're already doing the work anyway, but there are things that are still not being picked up, and we still are short, and people are having to work 10 to 12 hours a day for the past 7, and it's just non-sustainable. We did it while our colleague was out, but now that the person's retired, we had slated that position to be fully replaced. But again, looking outside the classroom, this is one of the areas that we felt we can make some reductions and still be able to meet all the needs of the system. So that's factored in there. And that was about a $50,000 or $60,000 reduction plus benefits. So it is about like a $90,000 savings if we go in this direction.
The HR role.
The HR role.
Yeah, because it's been a support role. Maureen and I talked this week, and it may be ready in early March. We're going to look at the business office and make it very clear what the roles are, how that adjustment fits, just so you see what the current staffing is, the roles, and any anticipated transitions. And we've not done that with the board, and I think it's very helpful for you to see what those core operations are both now and as we look down the road. And we probably by early March be able to share something with you on that.
Because the HR position in our district is a clerical role. I mean, it was a support function. That's how it's always been structured, and we've been able. But there is still some little bit of gaps, because again, I mean, since I've been here, there's been a person in that role. So with much less staff, we have a lot more staff and a lot more trainings and compliance and all the rest. But right now, amongst my team, we've been able to manage it. But there are still some needs that we need to. So again, this was not something done easily. As we were putting this budget together, in order to get it to where the tax compliance is and not to touch teaching staff and all the rest. This is something we felt, because we've been kind of living that way for about 6 months now or so, we made an adjustment. So again, that's savings between salary, benefits, and health insurance is about a $90,000 savings in order to do that. So that's what we're proposing in this budget.
I was just going to pipe in and say, yes, this is exactly what we have to do, right? Look at everything with the microscope and really make these hard decisions.
Yes.
But also putting everything on the table. I know the board received a letter from teachers a little while back about talking about the HR position in terms of hiring and being as equitable as possible, and just the power and the potential of an HR position for that role, and just to also weigh that consideration as well, because I thought it was well stated.
Yes, no, and I think obviously we looked at, I did see that, that there, and again, it's never to, yes, I know, I had read it. It's never to minimize the impact of that person, but budgets are hard, and kind of trying to make these decisions within the landscape of the challenges we were having is why. Because I mean, obviously, I honor the work that that Lynn contributed to the district, and we know the value brought there, and trying to really, though, being she was out, and just from a practical standpoint, the work has continued, the work has been handled. We have no gaps in terms of meeting our legal obligations, most, first in certification and badge reporting and all the things that have to happen in trainings and compliance and ensuring people kind of assisting people. So as we looked at it, we were like, we had it slated as a full-time, replacement hire, but we did have to go through with a fine-tooth comb every department and say, is this an area in which, because we know we're making it work, we can make it work, we can, do this.
No, I think that sounds right. I think it'd be helpful, as the Dr. McCursey said, just to see how it works and how those different jobs are redistributed.
Yeah, what we can do, and maybe Maureen will work, I think just giving you a sense systematically of the business office, how that relates to this adjustment. The Race Matters letter is very well-meaning, and I think, though, the understanding of what the exact work, I think, and I'm part of that committee, so hearing very clearly those concerns. But we'll bring it back in updates so you have to see the whole thing.
And I think also to be largely connected to what Alex started the meeting with tonight. I mean, if you're considering an administrative position in this other area, that could be some of that work, because this work is highly clerical, and that is what her position truly was. And other than saying sitting on a committee or something, those things maybe could be picked up elsewhere.
Right.
So looking at that as a mix and match and saying, because you can't really get away from the clerical aspects of that job, because it has a lot of them that are included. I'm caught up in a wire. I'm okay. Sorry, am I in your wire? Okay, I'm right under. I have the charging station right under my feet here. Okay, so next is operations and maintenance. Again, the highlights here, and again, unless someone has a particular question, I could kind of go through. So there's a lot of ins and outs in this budget area. This is for all of our custodian staff, our director of facilities, our maintenance department. It also includes all of our utility costs, all of our supplies that are needed for cleaning our building, and any type of work that's outside that we have to contract outside, and our garbage pickup and all the rest. What we are proposing in here, although you see an increase here because obviously the salaries and the cost of utilities and things were growing, and those were all increases. And we also do need, and it's included in this budget proposal, we are proposing a new truck that is needed for the department. They've been down one vehicle for a few years now, and we haven't bought a new vehicle for 12, 13 years. We did explore leasing options. That was not a viable option, nor the type of, you really can't get it, and the type of wear it gets, wouldn't even be something that, we couldn't find it on the contract the way we needed it to be, so we are proposing a truck in here. But we also did make some other reductions within that category to try to offset that. But in addition, we do have it currently, and we have it posted, and I actually had 25 resumes on my desk, and Joe and I had scheduled interviews to hire a new custodian, and I said to Joe, and this is a hurts too, because these people play a vital role. We're it's just, we're not going to be able to do it. I got to hold off on that hire.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
I was going to ask already. So $3.5 million proposed. That's down more than one person now from what we've traditionally carried, say, looking back 5, 6, 7.
We're already down one person. Now we'll be down two from what we had 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay, thanks.
And, that's one of the things, in particular, one of the things that we do that, although we get a little bit of the money back, as you could see when you come in the building today, everybody uses our buildings. And there's a lot of cost built into that, just in terms of their time and energy and being able to, I would say that although we only charge people for the overtime hours, right, when our building's unoccupied, there is a big cost in what our custodians, I don't even know how many hours a day is dedicated for non-school related help, and I say that not to say we should stop doing it, just as, when we are the hub of the community, there's a lot of, even some of the things that cost us money are really to support not only what we do, but all the outside things that happen here, and both even the utility costs of having the heat running at occupied mode at all hours of the night that wouldn't be required. So I think as we talk at the finance committee, maybe we want to start looking not so much as to limit people, but to say you need to share in a greater cost with the outside groups are going to. That would help us on the revenue side, just if everyone would contribute a little bit more. Because, Joe, rightfully so, is concerned about the staffing in his department and the ability for them. And I think we're trying to make trade-offs here to balance a budget. So, I say that with that's what's currently on the table. And it wasn't, it wasn't an easy thing. But again, we we have a team and everyone works really hard and they'll make it work. You know, they're going to make it work. So I just put that out there.
Just a quick question, Maureen.
Sure.
I fully support that. I think groups that use the facilities would, I'm sure, be willing to pay. You know, they're just sort of offsetting our expenses.
Correct.
Otherwise, we're footing their bill, really.
Yes, yes.
And that goes for security as well, utilities,
Yep.
operations, janitorial,
Yes.
sort of across the board. We should really look at that, come up with a fee structure and build it in.
No, absolutely. That's, you know, these are things we've looked at a few years ago, and one of the things we do pass along to, and there is some fees that the after-school program, I mean, they are true businesses. So this is, you know, I think we treat different groups differently, right? We have the full volunteer, the rec department, basketball. The only thing, or CYO, we charge them for when the building's closed and we have to bring a custodian, but we have been for the last few years charging everybody for security. And for two reasons, because A, it's important is to keep all of our students and all the children safe and our building safe. And that was something that we had in place, but it was really purely for the outside groups. Like, we did not need people in our building at night, you know, here and there maybe. So that is one of the things. Now, we aren't charging them, we kind of created a blended rate, and I may want to revisit that and give them plenty of notice so they can build it in. Like River Arts, you know, similarly, they pay toward that as well. But it's certainly, it's not exactly what it costs us. So I think we need to kind of try to look at those other costs. And I think even those little bits, it does help. Like even now, at least for the security, where we used to pay all of it out of pocket, I think we've made, with all the groups together, they probably pay us like $45,000, $50,000 for it. So it's good. I mean, that was something we used to pay solely and nobody paid toward it. So, and actually I think it's benefited keeping people safe. You know, we've really limited access to the building at night when people come in for practices and things, but I think it's for also the safety of students too, just not to have, it was a dual there. So then going right into the category of security, you can see here in this category contains everything that is security related, from our outside consultants that help us with our building plans and training and compliance, to our security guards who are at the doors, to some of our security guards who are security aides. So there are people who are purely security guards, and some of them work for the outside company. When they work for the outside company, legally they're unable, other than like being managing the door and the badge system, they're unable really to engage with a child if a child was eloping or there was an issue. Like, so we have a mix and match, but this includes all of that. As you can see, there's a slight increase there. Within the categories, we made some adjustments. We increased one of our contracts with external security because we think that's they're better kind of use of ensuring that because I felt like we kept adding, but we weren't really maximizing the staff we had. So instead now we have a little bit of a different model of kind of more oversight and like less people, because I felt we just kept adding people instead of being more strategic in how we were deploying people. So, but again, security is an extremely important, you know, element, something that we are not willing to cut back on, as it's, you know, kind of the basis of everything we do here. Special items, this includes the large ticket item in here is our general insurance, which we anticipate to go up based upon both insurance going up every year and also our own experience rating, which hasn't been great the last few years. Currently, I think I have an 8% increase there, and it may need to be adjusted up. I use that based upon a conversation I had with our insurance, because it is we're self-insured with a bunch of other districts, so your experience does drive your rate, and it, you know, for us it could go up 15%, and in a neighboring district they could go down 10 if they haven't had any claims. So that may need to be adjusted when I get my final rate. It also includes our required payment to BOCES for capital and admin costs, which is about another $300,000 each year. And as a component district of BOCES, even if we didn't use one iota of BOCES for technology, we would still have to pay that because we're a required component district by New York State definition. So that's what we have to pay, and that goes towards their capital. So that's also, we're required to capture it there. And then we also pay sewage to the town of Greenberg. So Those are the three items within special items, and you can see that's really just based upon primarily being driven by anticipated increase in insurance. So that brings the increase in the total general support portion of the budget at about $300,000, which is about a 5% increase. And again, under each category, I try to highlight the areas in which are changing. You know, some things are kind of status quo, and then this kind of captures everything I kind of said in terms of the larger changes that we're proposing within that area.
Maureen, before we leave this, can I just bring up
Sure.
the crossing guards? Do they fit in? Where do they fit into the general support?
They're in the Joe's department.
So operations and maintenance?
Yeah.
Are we thinking that?
Well, I
what's
put it
the
back
outlook?
in there, but I had to take something else out on another category after the last. But I just kind of said, like, that is one of the areas, and listen, I was part of putting that in there because we were part of a committee with the village, and I do think it's very valuable. I don't, me saying that, but I think as we always look at our budget, I don't want to say because that, again, is security and safety and all the rest, but we do try to start out like, everyone's important, but we try to stay away from the classroom. So any of those kind of things that either we've added, every year we talk about, which I will never cut, bus monitors on our in-district buses. And I'm like, that's well worth the money because prior to that, I oversee the busing, so I know there's a lot of issues on the buses without those monitors. So, but those are things that even science principals will say, well, maybe we should cut that. I'm like, it's like $40,000. I think it's a safety issue. God forbid there was an accident.
Yeah.
One bus driver with 50 little ones. It doesn't, even in a small village. It does. So anyway, but to your question, I put it in there, for now, and because I think
Thank you.
that's what I heard that. So these are the slides that, I'm looking at my computer. So these are the breakdown. I should have really went to this. This is everything I kind of spoke to today. I could have, I guess, flipped through these slides. I wasn't thinking as I was talking, that reflect the line by line items there. You can see, and as I just mentioned, this is what I went over, but you'll see in the personnel, although it only shows a $36,000 reduction in salary, you're also, because I'm anticipating that to be shared in a part-timer combined with, reallocating work in my office, but we're saving on the benefits, we're saving on the health insurance package. So it really is like a $95,000 savings that if we were to reinstitute a full-time person in there, it's not just the salary, it's the, all the other benefits that go along with full-time employees. And similar to the maintenance, so although here we only capture salaries within the areas in the undistributed portion of the budget, I've taken out those benefit packages, anticipating those reductions. So or else those numbers would be much higher.
Can I ask, does BOCES offer any HR capacity or not really?
Well, they offer, there's trainings and things such as that, but that's about it. We participate, I myself have gone to different workshops.
Where that piece of the regional work that I'm going to sign on for has that component.
That's right.
We'll see what it gets. It's a common need across. We'll see. The trick there is you have multiple entities all competing in essence. So how that's managed centrally is a little trick. But at the regional part, we can take a look.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. I think HR, Melissa knows too. We all kind of, even outside of what Lynn or that position is doing, there's a certain, we all share it. We all share it because even being the title, it's part of our roles. We're both Title IX officers, which is really an HR function and yeah, trainings and all that. Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of that, even when Lynn was full-time, we were still managing, we were still doing it. So I would say the higher level.
I think given all the questions, we'll come back to it in a systematic way, and maybe the March 3rd meeting, we can hit that.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, because rightly so, there's some misunderstanding out there in terms of what was what. So we want to clarify that.
And again, there's nothing, I never want to suggest that anything we reduce, tweak, change, modify doesn't mean it wasn't worthwhile. It's really just because we have to make our budget work. And we're trying to make decisions based upon staying away from, classroom programs and extracurriculars. So now we're transportation overview of the budget. And as you can see here, it's broken down into 5 lines. Transportation, that's how we budget for it, and that's how we identify it. And you can see just the cost of running the transportation program. The largest part of the transportation program, of course, is our out-of-district busing. And I can provide, I don't have it at my fingertips tonight, but I typically, as I get it from Ardsley, I can give you what our numbers are looking like next year, because that's, each year we ourselves send students to out-of-district placements, as well as parents who either parentally place their children in private schools, and as well as whether it be private or special education program, we are required to transport those students. If they're just if they're private school placed gen ed students, it's up to 15 miles we have to transport. And for special ed students that are parentally placed, it's up to 60 miles we have to transport. So this is also the cost of some of our in-district busing is captured in here as well, because some of our children require specialized busing for in-district routes. So anything that is not the big four buses that are in the in-district busing, that would be captured in the out-of-district busing too. So that also does have, there's about a couple internal runs we do with some small buses as well. So one of the things I'll just highlight here is in our out-of-district busing, we're anticipating one additional run next year. To be honest with you, there was more than one run requested. I only budgeted for one run, because this is, again, this is connected when we go over the instructional budget to students that are potentially being, or are anticipated to be going out of district next year, parentally placed. And just as I have mentioned before, just as transportation in general, all transportation is extremely expensive. One additional out-of-district small bus could be over $100,000. That's the cost of it contractually. So, you know, the impact of any additional out-of-district runs is always significant. So this is an area right now have everything we kind of doing this year. We're projecting one additional bus run. The difficult part about budgeting this is parents have up to April 1st to ask for a bus for next year, and I have to establish the budget now. So typically we look at the students that are currently out, their grade level and all the rest. We anticipate they'll be requesting the same accommodation for next year. And then of course our in-district students, we try to figure out, you know, how that would work. And then unfortunately though, once April 1st, this could potentially go up, because there could be more. Actually, there was a student today who's moving here that is in an out-of-district placement, privately placed, that will have to transport. So just something to say that it literally, I got an email today from the registrar, so that's an always ever-changing number. Sports the last few years, this number just, I mean, now it's kind of leveled off, but 2 or 3 years ago it was only about 175,000. Yeah. Now that's just the cost of busing has gone up so exponentially. And then we have, of course, more teams. And as we offer more opportunities for our students, you know, there's an impact there as well. So again, transportation, very costly part of our budget, $162,000 anticipated increase for about 8%. But again, primarily driven by an additional bus run. If we didn't have that, it would be obviously closer to what it was this year. Okay, undistributed. This is by far one of the largest sections of the budget, and definitely the section of the budget that has had the largest impact on our budget for the last few years, because this is the area in which all of our benefits for all of our employees are captured. It's the required place to be captured by New York State. And as the highlights show here, we're anticipating close to about $1 million increase, and this is a net increase. So this is with people that we're anticipating. You know, we're reducing some positions, we're adding some positions. This is like that also takes into account all of that. And again, in particular, the health insurance has been a large driver here. So one of the things that's also covered under undistributed, and I'll speak to it after we get through the benefits, is also debt service, which is the area in which we pay for our bond payments and interest for the bonds that we currently are paying for, as well as special ed summer school transfers out. They have to be captured. They're just kind of funny things in New York State. I don't know why all these things are kind of categorized in one area, but this is how they do it. And then as well as some of those small projects that Joe identifies each year to be done. One of the things that I wanted just to highlight here, and you don't see captured within the budget numbers, we're working, once we get Farragut Middle School bottom fully open, then we can focus on this. We're hoping to take money out of our capital reserve this year to do a couple larger air conditioning projects in the building that we would have to get a state permit for and all the rest. So that, how we anticipate seeing that, we wouldn't build it into our budget, we would have it as a separate vote on our May vote, and just to authorize whatever the cost is. So I just wanted, though, to throw that out there because it is still part of the budget discussion.
And just to be clear, that's money that's already in the reserve. We're just,
Yes.
just the authorization to allocate
Correct,
it. Right.
yep. I mean, right now, one of the projects we've been looking at, and we had contemplated doing it within the bond, is air conditioning our gyms. And that is very, I mean, in Westchester, it's happening everywhere. And partly, the big problem for me is that it's so hot in the Cochran gym, and it's hot from probably May. Honest to God, it is very hot in there. But then they open up all the doors, and then, like, it's like a security risk. Like, it's like people just walk in the building. So, you know, that's not ideal. And those are all alarm doors and things like that. So, I mean, honestly, this is something I had asked some colleagues, and every single one of them, they're like, every gym was air conditioned now, that at least in the river towns and beyond. So, not that that matters, but it is more typical now to have gyms air conditioned, just like, and it is considered a classroom, and then we get into issues with New York State requirement to not be above a certain temperature, which that gym often is. So, and then as far as the capital proposed transfer work, you can see here what some of the small things that that $150,000 transfer that is included in this budget proposal, not a separate line item, that will cover that work. So looking at employee benefits, quick highlight, the non-teacher retirement, that's the ERS, it's known as New York State ERS system. That rate is actually increasing next year. And there's two things going on here. It's not only that the rate is increasing, we've also had a significant increase, and this covers like teacher aides and monitors and people like that are non-instructional. Because the rates going up, we will also have had a significant increase in staffing in this area. So those two factors are causing this line item to grow up by $133,000. On the flip side, the teachers' retirement, two things are happening. We were a little bit over budget this year, coupled with the fact that that rate is actually going down. So from a budgetary perspective, we're budgeting, it's actually going up above what we paid this year, but going down over a budgetary, budget to budget year, about $87,000. And then again, the health insurance items, which are the buyouts as well as the health insurance itself, that's about $900,000 of this increase. And then everything else is relatively flat. So this item, this area of the budget is growing at about $930,000. Okay.
Alex, we're going to transition. Alex has to jump, so we'll have a new chair.
Oh, okay, sorry, yes. So then as far as, again, the undistributed area, the undistributed area of the budget, this is, again, debt. You can see here it's all broken down, so you can see what accounts for what. We have two old bonds that we're still paying down, and as well as the incoming interest for the band. One of the things, there is a debt that is going to be falling off this coming year, and that is for our installment purchase agreement. It was an EPC, an energy performance agreement, that we have now fully satisfied. So there's actually a reduction in the budget to budget for those categories. And then just looking at how that plays out in the total of the undistributed, as I mentioned, it's a slight increase in the total debt service of about $52,000. And then as far as the interfund transfers, again, this is just money in and out of capital, and we're anticipating about a $125,000 reduction there. So as we look at that whole category, the net increase of that category is about $862,000. Now moving on to the revenue overview, and this just breaks down our revenue and in some greater detail. And you can see, although some are small in dollars, every amount does matter to us. And just as I mentioned earlier, the other charges, custodial fees, that does include some of the overtime people pay to us, and some of the security and all the rest that is captured in there. That number may be adjusted up slightly before we finalize our budget, but right now I'm just being conservative and putting $60,000 there. One of the things for this upcoming school year, day school tuition is when parents parentally place their children in our district and pay the district tuition. The last few years, and I'm sure it's partially the economy, there's years in which we've had a lot more students. This year we had maybe like about 8 students or so, 9 students, but 4 of them are seniors and they're graduating, and we really don't have anybody on the horizon to take their place. So again, this is a category where there's been years where we've had about $500,000 in revenue, other years it's just based on interest. And the last few years in particular, a lot of people tuition in while they're finding a home in Hastings, and they may tuition for a year and then they move in with their family. So we're anticipating a decrease there based upon projected students. Similarly, tuition in other districts, we have other districts who place their children in some of our special education programs. Right now we're anticipating a slight drop there because some of the students are aging out of our programs, and as of today, I don't know if there's any replacements or any new students interested in our program. We are increasing based upon what we're currently earning in our interest incomes. We're anticipating we're increasing that budget allocation to about $700,000 there, and then everything else is pretty much status quo. Again, they're just kind of small revenues, but things we're required to break down as you see them here. Unclassified revenues is typically like insurance recoveries, other fees, sometimes donations, prior year. BOCES is required. They have to reconcile the year, and any money that they billed us that is over their finalized budget, they have to return to us. And that's primarily the source of income in that category. It's about $75,000 a year we get back as a refund in the subsequent year from BOCES. Sales tax, again, has been strong the last few years, and we are anticipating to budget an increase there. As I had mentioned at our previous board meeting, the good news is that the state aid is anticipating to increase, and you can see here we're anticipating about a little bit less than $400,000 increase in that category. And then, as we've been talking a lot about, we are increasing our transfers from fund balance and reserves to about $800,000. And then the remainder has to be raised by local property taxes, and that's approximately $1.4 million. Tax cap summary, I don't need to go over this again, but we always want to keep it in the record so people can kind of see the ins and outs and how that dollar amount is derived. And again, this is just in here each year, and it's really just assuming if people are looking at our budget presentations on our website and trying to understand what is within that allowable growth factor and CPI. It's just really a definition here of how the tax cap works, and what some of these tax-based growth factor, the definitions, and we just leave it in there more so for as people look at the tax cap to understand the different pieces of it. And again, this is something that continues to be a challenge, and I think that's why districts at times as I spoke earlier, either if they haven't had a larger growth factor or other breaks in their district, they have sometimes went for an override because the tax cap is challenging, especially in the last few years, primarily during COVID. We worried about state aid, but the costs were a little bit, our health insurance at that time was pretty flat. So in the last few years with the increases in the overall cost of living, it's become a real challenge to stay within that tax cap. And again, the important dates tonight was our non-instructional budget, and we could have further budget discussions at actually that's May 3rd meeting, right? Not May 1st. It's May 3rd, I think, is our next meeting. But May 17th is the night. Oh, sorry, May 1st is when we have to submit our tax levy cap to the state. May 17th, we'll be doing our instructional budget presentation. What did I say?
May.
March, sorry. getting me. March 17th, we will be presenting our instructional budget, and then you can see the rest of the dates. An important date for the board is that you're required to adopt the budget by April 21st, so can go to the voters for May 19th. So the time will fly between, it's a little bit over 2 months, and with the breaks and things, it'll be here before you know it. So, we can definitely have more discussions at the board meeting between this one and the 17th, if there's other items that the board wants to dig into a bit more based on the discussion tonight. But we will have, more opportunities leading up to that April 21st date for the board to, delve in a bit deeper. And again, we're anticipating we have a finance committee meeting scheduled for next week, and the week when we get back from break, and we anticipate having a few more of those, between now and the budget being finalized.
So let me just, the design here is, and it's not shown here, but March 3rd is your next meeting. The design here is that you can dig into this detail. You may have some questions now, but you can dig into this detail, and then March 3rd on this part of the budget, certainly we'll be ready to answer questions. Just to be clear, the Finance Committee, that's not a budget management body, that's a larger planning around finance body. So that's not a place where the budget per se immediate is discussed as much as the larger financial issues. And as Maureen and I have been talking last week, just given the front end material, the challenges clearly before us, it's good to have that Finance Committee meeting again to deal with that larger picture. So I want to be clear, that's not where detailed budget stuff for this year gets discussed. That's in this context, right? And then again, a lot of detail here, study those charts. We can talk some now, but certainly March 3rd, it's designed to be an open space. Similarly, after March 17th, a lot more detail, then there's a follow-on there to give you time. And then after the 17th, roughly 2 weeks later, you get the whole detailed budget book. So that's a method of giving you and the public all of the detail on this. All right?
So I didn't know if anybody had any questions.
I just want to say thank you. I mean, the level of effort that goes into these, and just how you kind of behind the scenes work with everybody and take one thing out and predict another thing really well. I mean, just hats off to you. You do a great job. So thank you. Thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to concur with what you just said. Every finance person I've ever worked with told me that a budget is just a big story, and you tell an excellent story and really help us understand this, so thank you.
Well, thank you.
I guess, Maureen, what I want to say is I'm always struck by how you put your heart and soul into this and your head every year, and it's amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's a lot of work from a lot of people, and thank God it this year, each year is a new year, but it's just important that we're all working together, especially as Bill said with that finance committee, those long-term things. I think we're kind of at a point where we're really needing to really grapple with some things.
I might just, and Catherine had a great question about how have districts dealt with, now it's not your phrase, but it's mine, cutback management, when you're facing these very severe situations. And I'd say it's close to severe, what we got to navigate the next couple of years. And that's why the finance committee needs to get back in business. I think the key is so much is personnel, and then so much is a consistent leadership team able to really grapple with that. Because we are definitely in the central office. We're not a no, you can't, as opposed to, okay, let's be creative. And Andy's ready to do that, but he's new. Even though he's an expert principal, he's new to this system. We're about to, tomorrow, begin the process of a very talented group of people to be the new FMS principal, but it's getting that person in and then getting them into creative mode. We'll have a new director of leadership and PPS, assistant super, trying to get, and we're already getting some mileage out of Gene. But if we can get that team coalesced, it's saying, as the finance committee works, the board works, then to say with Maureen's expert detail knowledge, all right, where do you find alternatives? Where do you find room to move? And the one ad may not be right now, but let's think about where we can fold that in and build that in. So your question's excellent, and that's why we're right now saying, again, finance committee, get our leadership up to speed. Some of that may take another year. But really be thoughtful about how to be creative, and then we've got the backbone on all this of Maureen and her office, and that's why I also want to have the board of real clarity on an incredible hardworking team in that office, so you actually know what's going on.
Yeah,
I think that'd be
that's
helpful
great.
to all of you.
Yeah, I think it'd be
So,
cute.
all right.
You know, the thing is, I know tonight, some of the upfront things, they're like difficult, like even for myself, and looking at it, you know, you get worried. I think the next one, the good news though is that we are, for the most part, you know, they're growing some, Gina will do a great job presenting it at our March 17th meeting. There's some really exciting new things that this budget does include. And although we do have to grapple with the out years, I think there's some really good investments that are being proposed in this budget. And then all the things our students like to participate in, and the clubs and the sports, and all those things are intact, and the teaching, you know, like all of our programs are fully intact. There's no reductions in anything in terms of our things that impact our students. So I think that also, although it's going to be challenging and I'm worried, I'm also very happy that our current budget at least includes all those things and has some additional things to support our students as well. So that'll be a positive meeting on a lot of fronts, the March 17th meeting in terms of the budget. Phil.
Everybody good here?
Yeah, I think so.
Move on?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to public comment. Thank you for your patience.
Yes, thank you.
If you can come up, Melissa will call people up to the mic. Be sure to introduce yourself, and remember there's a 3-minute limit. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, first of all, okay, my name is Orly Athan, and I live here in Hastings. Hold on close.
Yeah.
Here? Okay, my name is Orly Athan. You can hear me. I live here in Hastings. I'm representing my children who are in 3rd grade and in 5th grade. I actually really encourage more people to come here or watch it from home. This was really illuminating. And in a lot of ways, I hope it puts my question into better context, because I'm going to be here to talk about the free lunch program. I don't know how else to speak about it, but the cafeteria food. And I think it's apt that we are here in this brand new building, which we've all spent a lot of money, time, and effort to conceive. Unfortunately, though, since October, I'm here as a parent to offer in a constructive spirit. Let me just put some niceties here, which I really do mean, and I really truly appreciate the work that you as administration and staff do every day, and recognize the intention behind recent changes to the lunch program, probably to offset some of these budget costs, and the spirit of creativity, like finding those grants, is what we want. But I'm sharing feedback on behalf of my son's experience with the hope of helping the program better meet its purpose, which is to support the students' health, well-being, and ability to learn. So since October, my son comes down from the bus and every day says something about the cafeteria food, mainly how disappointed he is with it, and mainly the quality of the food, if not the menu offerings. He really actually feels unwell after eating the lunch here, including stomach pain and nausea, and because of this, no longer looks forward to lunchtime, and so he says, "Ugh, it's lunchtime." And of course, it's also a community experience, so he refuses for me to give him lunch because everybody else, is getting the cafeteria food. And he tries to find the least bad option. So what does that sound like? I interviewed him, so I thought you'd get some direct quotes. The food makes you have a really bad tummy after you eat it. The cheese literally dries out like plastic or dried syrup. The meat looks like poo. Last year, the food was better because you would pay maybe a little bit more for it, and the meat was real, like real turkey meat, and the cheese was actual sprinkle cheese, and for the taco, you had the option for lettuce, tomato. And now, when I smell it, it smells like on an airplane, and it smells low quality. So I'm going to save some of the other kind of words that he's used, but I really do see him feeling very unwell. He's lost his appetite over the course of the time that he's here, and to the point that we're February here, and I felt like I needed to show up and tell you all about it. I do not think he's alone. In fact, he talks about many petitions that have gone through with the school, and I believe there was even a declaration of food independence that may or may not have been handed to you. He was pointing to a recent visit. So in short and in conclusion, I asked him if he had a magic wand, what would he do? And he would say he would specifically, basically, I like the menu, but everything more high quality. The food options are great, but the quality is low. And specifically change the meat and cheese options, which seem to be of a quality that is questionable. His positive notes is that the people who work there are very cheery and very kind and helpful. So we've been, in short, I think this was a well-intentioned experiment that now needs adjustment. We've invested significantly as taxpayers in a beautiful new cafeteria, and it makes little sense to pair that investment with food that students struggle to eat. The end. I think we need more choices. Thanks for hearing me out. And he's here. Theo, do you have anything you want to say? Oh, maybe I'll let you know something off camera about something we just saw. Scurry.
You can always write a letter to the board.
Okay, thank you. Bye now.
Good evening, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Well, my name is Rosie Pusiamadam, and I'm actually a proud graduate of Hastings, and I came back here to raise my children. So I'm here to talk to you about math. I have been part of these math conversations with a few other moms this year because it has been a very confusing journey for me and my 7th grader about the math standards and the different class options and what was offered and how do you get into a class. I was shocked at the math scores for the 7th graders, and I felt a panic. And when I felt that panic, I ended up joining a tutoring group for my son, and now he's in weekly tutoring to get a better chance to get into a math class, I think. He thankfully is doing fine so far this year in math, and our hope is that he will meet these standards that we just got the other day. To get into algebra, most districts in our area have moved to an 8th grade being Algebra 1, so the students have more options in high school for math. Why Hastings is so behind in this, I am not sure, still. I'm fortunate enough to be able to afford this tutoring and the cost of it, but I worry about the kids who can't and the families that can't, and what we are doing as a district to support them. The changes required have been slower than expected. After alarming numbers on the state test results and the STAR assessment, we have had a great experience in math, to be honest, with this year with Mr. Lembo and now Ms. Bartolini. He's thriving, thank God. But I am concerned about the lack of congruency between all of the math classes and talking to all the different parents and how all of our children are somehow learning something different between all the classes. I hope the teachers are supported in helping all of our students succeed and making equity a priority here. We shouldn't really need this much supplement in the hopes of meeting state standards and getting into this 8th grade algebra class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see so many friendly faces here. First off, I just want to thank all of you for what you do. I know this is mostly a volunteer position, and it's very time-consuming. So thank you for all you do to make and elevate our district. I'm Laura Owens. I have a 7th grader and a 4th grader. I've worked in the nonprofit education reform sector for many years. I was at the New York City Department of Education under the Joel Klein administration, where I worked in the Office of Accountability. Really fun office, but in that office was assessment. I've also worked at the National I Have a Dream Foundation for about a decade, working with students from under-resourced communities, getting them to and through college. So I am familiar with assessment data. I'm also here to talk about math. I am deeply concerned about the state of math in our district and believe significantly more resources should be dedicated to strengthening math instruction across the entire district, particularly in middle school. I have raised these concerns with Bill, Melissa, Dan, others on the board, but I think it should be top priority. This year, only 60% of our 7th grade students scored proficient in math, meaning levels 3 and 4. While this is slightly higher than, don't quote me, but I think the New York City average of proficiency was around 56%. There is no justification that a small district like ours, where we're paying really expensive taxes and have a really small sample size of students, that these should be our scores. New York State standards are meant to just hold schools accountable. They are meant to show that every school across New York State, across this country, are teaching kids at a proficient standard, right? They're not supposed to be hard. So I just find it really troubling that this is our data. And I think it should be a top priority. I urge the board to reconsider the use of the STAR assessment in placing math placement decisions. This is an adaptive tool meant to differentiate student instruction. It is not meant to track students. And I did see in the latest guidelines for 8th grade enrichment or algebra, algebra, not enrichment, that there is a reduced focus on that, but I just think it's not really appropriate to use that at all. And then I also want to just emphasize 2 points that Rosie made. Algebra for all, many districts across Westchester and New York City are moving to algebra for all. The reason for this is because we don't want to track students. We don't want to close off the opportunity for them to learn and explore that at such an early age. So I would really encourage I know this is something that actually Melissa and Bill and the math department is eager to try to implement. I would love to see that implemented in 8th grade next year. And the final thing is this really important point about equity. And if we dig into the data, I think we can see some really troubling groupings with the math data based on IEPs, based on race, and I think that, and then there's income. And the students who can afford, I am one of those parents that can afford for my student to get additional tutoring, but I think that the way the math was done this year in 7th grade exasperates the gap between various factors of a family, which should not be apparent in our data. Thank you again. I know you are working on it, but I just want to emphasize how important this is.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Is that it? Okay, moving along. Bill, do you want to do a superintendent update?
Yeah, I'll have to switch the image. I'll be efficient with it. Actually, I can be most efficient if I go up there.
Okay.
But turning around, seeing it, and speaking on the mic is tricky. I'll be efficient with this, and I'll get to the mic. And for those who are here, the reason we go on the mic is for those at home. This is off. And now I did the right thing. I turned it on. So every meeting we have this year, it's in the public record. Melissa and Kara put this together. I review it, give some input, but it's really a work of the team. And it's an attempt for all the great hard questions and the good constructive criticism we receive, which we deserve and should receive, and you try and learn from all that, just to remind ourselves every 2 weeks how much good stuff's going on. So, and a lot of it's thanks to the Hastings Education Fund and others, as you'll see, and you can look at the details later, but here's an author visit. A lot of focus on literacy, books, and learning, both within who we have here, but who we can get to and through good use of technology. FMS, Newspaper Club, collaborating with a local paper, trying to keep honest-to-goodness journalism going, both hard copy and in the digital form. So a real plus. And you get a little glimpse of our redone, totally brought back, rebuilt wing, the Farragut wing. Big moment last week. Was it last week now? Yeah, it was. Working with the IWG, put together a program called Words Matter. There are 2 slides on it here. I was lucky to be in the audience for this and listen. I think there were about 50 parents there. Melissa was there. A real feature of this was the partnership around, yes, how do we help our students better understand that hateful language is wrong? There's no place for it, and how do we deal with that? The exciting piece of this is this was a featuring of Exploring Equity, which is now the required course 6th, 7th, and 8th within the middle school, replacing Courageous Conversations. And a new, to us, dynamic teacher, who, by the way, I did one of his formal evaluations today, so he was as good in the small group as in the large group, Chris Nellis. I think everyone in that room, I was sitting in the back, and I was seeing a lot of nodding heads in the sense of really seeing him connect, both with the substance, the material, and with the student panel that was there expressing their voice, their perspective. Interim Principal Dan Waldick did a wonderful job. Janice Mateo Toledo, who really is the key to all of this, which is often her style, was in the background on this. There were more people than it looks like there, but it was a very important moment to say, here is key curricular work, academic work, core work as it relates to behavioral issues. And one key point, Mr. Waldick said, the value of this course is when when he hits a Dignity Act moment, a code of conduct moment, this course now allows him with his students to say, remember that particular lesson. Given your behavior, how are you connecting with that lesson? So things are beginning to go full circle. Sitting off to my right, fortunately I'm not in the picture, a parent with an 8th grader said, I'm so glad to see this change, but what's in the high school? And we said this is now structured so the middle school it's required. Once you get into the high school, which is more of an elective type structure, then things are woven in. The parents seem to appreciate this emerging structure and flow. Now we're into robotics. This is something that started great teacher leadership on it that's really taken off. I think we've been featuring the robotics team a fair amount here. We may get them back in June to actually have some of their devices, machines running around the room here, unlike that critter some of you saw earlier. Maybe it'll chase that critter you saw earlier, but we'll work on that. Wrestling. Many of you may know that in December I had to make the decision to shut down the wrestling program because of certain behavior. March 3rd, Mr. Clayman and Mr. Waldeck will come to present to you, the board, and thus the public, what has happened since. They went through a very detailed, thorough process, Mr. Clayman at the point of it, because this was the varsity high schoolers, on what led to the superintendent need to shut the program down, but then to allow student athletes to win their way back onto the team. And the result was very detailed, thorough restorative work, letting people come back, and at the end of the season now, a number of our students showing their character there also had a lot of success on the wrestling mat. But I think March 3rd is a good way to give an update to you as a board, and then to those who want to be in the audience on what was occurred. It was very, very thorough. I honor greatly how Mr. Clayman, Mr. Waldeck worked together on this, working closely with the counseling staff, other teachers, all the rest, also with Tara Ware on what was best for these particular students. We'll do this in a way to protect privacy, but in a way that show you as a board and then the public what was a really key moment in an evolution here. Hey, let's have some fundraising. So we do promote for anything related to the district. We do allow our communications to be a space for fundraising. Some of our key partners, Hastings Ed Fund, but you know, February 10th, a little past. Maybe I'm getting hungry, but it's still in here today. Hustle.
They couldn't have
and
done
then
this here.
midwinter recess. I don't know where you'll be in midwinter recess, but hopefully having a good time. And then another promo, and another promo, and another promo, and another promo. We want kindergartners. And there's the upcoming events.
Thank you, Bill.
How long is it?
Thanks, Bill. Guess moving along to Melissa Smansky for an update.
So my update this evening is around middle school mathematics, and on November 18th, I presented a curriculum update which was centered on work in the middle school in the area of ELA and also on math. And so I wanted to first provide an overview of the progress planned on each of the steps that I indicated, and then add some additional information about the work that's been ongoing. So back on November 18th, I outlined that one of the points that we were working to do was to hire a mathematics interventionist. So we did post for that right away, and we posted, this is something that was off-season, right? So we have not yet been able to identify a qualified applicant. So that position remains open, and we continue to look to see who's applying. Supplemental 7th grade mathematics, a Schedule B for before and after school enrichment has been negotiated, and we anticipate offering 3 sections of enrichment for a cycle of 10 weeks, and each of those sections will take place twice weekly for 30 minutes. So 1 will be before school, 2 will be after school. We were not able to identify one educator that was willing to teach all of the sections. We were after I just want to say thank you to our educators too. I had a lot of individual conversations. So we did end up with 3 people who applied. And because it's 3 different people that applied, I need to bring them together so that we can have an aligned approach. So there will be a little bit of time that's needed to make sure that we do that. And then those families who qualified originally based on the survey criteria that I sent out will be invited to participate. And we've identified both before and after school groupings. We've already done that based on families' preferences. And once that Schedule B is fully designed, we will be reaching out. I'm expecting that it will be available to students late March, early April, and again, it's 10 weeks. Intervention resource pilot. I did speak to the potential of doing that. We are in the process now of piloting FastBridge. That's a data management tool for our MTSS process. And it will help us not only stay organized with our data, but it'll also help us to better track interventions in a very centralized way. Mathematics and ELA teachers have also been piloting Freckle, which is an intervention resource. And I will just add one thing. FastBridge is a Renaissance product, and we do use Renaissance Star. So when we're thinking about the purpose of Renaissance Star, which is a diagnostic screener and to be able to monitor achievement and progress over time, it's really nice that FastBridge is also a connected Renaissance product because it centralizes everything. So we're trying it out, and we're looking forward to the feedback on that from our buildings. Pilot professional learning I spoke to as related to the intervention resources. So training has occurred for FastBridge and Freckle. It has not been a long, robust training because we are in a pilot, but it has been an adequate training to be able to use the products, and we have had ongoing support with both of those. So that's been great. We anticipate another call soon for check-in and additional coaching. And should we choose to move forward, then we can build in a much more robust, comprehensive professional learning plan around them. Finalization of advanced placement criteria. That was promised by the end of January, and sure enough, at the end of January, we convened a strong team of middle school faculty, including administrators, mathematics teachers, special education staff, ENL staff, our mathematics interventionists, middle school counselors, and district administration. I was there, Lori Affiero was there as Director of School Counseling. Kudos to Dan Waldeck for doing the first run with a group, and then the larger group came in. So it was first with the specific teachers and counselors, and then a larger group of us then came in to help push the thinking around what had been created and to refine. Families have now been notified about advanced coursework pathways and associated selection criteria for placement into Algebra 1 as 7th graders rising into 8th graders. And the criteria is based on the student's math grade average of marking periods 1 and 2 of 7th grade, and that's 15%. The math grade average during marking period 3 of 7th grade, that's 30%. We had, as a group, and again, kudos to Dan and team for taking the first pass, pushed an empowered learning rubric forward. So competencies and disciplines associated with being an empowered learner and taking agency for learning. And so we felt it was important to also take this opportunity to align to our portrait of a Hastings learner, and empowered is one of the competencies in the portrait. So we wanted to make sure that that was linked in there as well. Students' end-of-year STAR Spring Math percentile result from their 7th grade year. I agree with the comment that was made around de-emphasizing STAR as a placement criteria. The purpose of STAR Renaissance is a diagnostic screener. So it's to track achievement, to track growth, to think about readiness and next level of work. And so we have minimized the amount that would contribute to placement. However, it is actually a really important window for us to see how students are doing over time. And it's data that we have that is very clear, it's quantitative, and it points to a picture of a student at both an individual point in time and also their growth. So thinking about student readiness and movement. But again, we have largely de-emphasized that as a placement criteria. There will be emphasis on a placement exam, and that will be administered in quarter 4. 30% will be connected with that placement exam. This is not dissimilar to a practice that has been used in the past for placement into Algebra 1. However, it was not used last year. So the date of the placement exam will be shared at least 1 month prior. And for anyone wanting to be considered for placement as a rising 8th grader, will need to take that assessment in order to be considered for placement. So quarter 4 performance will then be reviewed to ensure that the student demonstrates continued success in the course. Anyone who earns less than a 90 in quarter 4 may lose their enrollment for the 26-27 school year. And this is also thinking about questions we've received over time. While this is a high school credit-bearing course, the high school override protocols do not apply. This is in the middle school building. And so then what will come of all of this is that the building will be able to do data analysis looking at the cohort of students. And so you heard some public comment this evening around metrics related to the state assessment. That is very important. So when we are designing pathways for our learners, we can have an ultimate goal, and we can say over time we are hoping to get to Algebra 1 for all. And also we need to be deeply respectful of where our learners are right at this moment so that we are not setting them up for coursework that they're not yet demonstrating prerequisite proficiencies for, right? So we are on a runway with all of this. So after all of this is taking place, we will look at the cohort, and from there decisions will be made about the number of sections that will be offered of Algebra 1 versus Math 8, right? This year we moved to 4 sections of Algebra 1, 2 sections of Math 8, and really thinking about opening things up so that we can maximize potential while also respecting where students are in their journey. As it pertains to double accelerated, we're still working that through. At this time, we are not confirming double acceleration for next year. We have got to think about, as we're working through our program, our course offerings, the standards, thinking about the trajectory of students, making sure students are not missing something if they're advancing, right? We, at the same time we're differentiating and thinking about pathways for acceleration, we have to prioritize students who are not meeting proficiency standards. And when we're thinking about the intersection with budget, with FTE, with our current staffing, making sure that we are being very responsible in thinking about how we're differentiating for our learners and whether or not that means seats in a dedicated class to students who are double accelerating, or perhaps redeploying to think about a what I need concept where there's differentiated, targeted support to students who are not meeting proficiency standards to ensure that they are moving as quickly as possible to those grade level benchmarks. So it's not a hard no, but at this time, there is not a plan to offer the double acceleration. We are continuing to explore that, so I just want to be fully transparent about that. And those discussions are happening alongside not only our team, but we do have an external thought partner that we will be involving in that decision around pathway, who has not yet been involved in that. So that's a little overview on Oh, one additional piece, determining the middle school course offerings. That's what I just stated. So there will be a grade 8 pre-algebra, which is the math 8 content. Will also be a grade 8 algebra 1. So those are the updates related to what I presented back on November 18th. I'd also like to add that mathematics professional learning and the initiative work with the team has begun, and Anshula Sobran, Dr. Sobran, has joined us, and I cannot underscore enough how well received this work has been. And I cannot thank our professionals more highly. There is urgency from every single stakeholder group, including our teaching professionals. Everyone is rolling up their sleeves and wants the very best for our students. And we are all on the same page that there needs to be movement on the continuum, on the resources, on everything I just updated you on. We are fully linked on this. Our arms are intertwined, strong aligned appetite for change. And the participants in the work of the initial session, and the group will continue, all grades 6 through 8 mathematics teachers, a teacher representative from 5th grade who will serve as a turnkey, as a generalist, special educator, an E&L teacher, the building administrators, and I've been in on that work as well, of course. So a bulleted overview of key highlights during the initial session. We shared experiences with mathematics as learners and teachers, because we bring our own history to our work around mathematics to make sure we are on the same page around our beliefs, around our values, what we're coming to the table with in the area of math. We did a fireside protocol, so everyone shared feelings, brief thoughts about the work ahead. We did a temperature check to see where readiness was in the room for moving forward. Structured opportunity to align concerns, hopes, and expectations, an analysis of themes emerging from those concerns, hopes, and expectations, deep reflection on the current state of mathematics instruction, professional learning, curriculum, assessment. There was an audit of resources, thinking about our assessments, thinking about our grading practices, thinking about our communication together, perception of the state of the mathematics program, including strengths, tensions, or challenges, and also a reflection on things that became clear after the session and the process. So again, strong positive response to being together as a team, strong positive response to being on the same page and looking ahead to the remainder of the school year. There will be 7 additional sessions, and the teachers were quite concerned about the messaging around that, and I volunteer as tribute wholeheartedly to speak on their behalf, and I will be sending something out from the district to communicate with the middle school families. Teachers will need to be out of their rooms all day on 4 of those 7 sessions, and 3 of those sessions have been scheduled for push-in coaching, so Dr. Sobran will come in so that there is support and direct application. But the research is very clear on this idea of collective efficacy. There is great power in the group moving together in a direction, and they all have to be together in a room, which means they're not going to be in the room with their students those 4 days. Speaking from my past experience in another district, I did a similar type of work, really comprehensive overhaul in terms of ELA, and without ever speaking about the state tests at all, and with teachers being out of their rooms once a month on a regular basis, which is more than this, the performance rose 33% on the state tests. So I do want to share that, lest people be nervous about teachers being out of the classroom. They are engaged in very thoughtful, difficult work together that really is urgent and needs to be done. We are currently unable to fill the role of the mathematics department chairperson. The last time I spoke of this role, I mentioned that we had people identified and interested. There are structural challenges to making it happen. In our district, the mathematics department chairperson has a point to release. And at this point in the year, because it's mid-year, it would require giving up a class of students. It would be reconfiguration of personnel. We've been working very collaboratively to try to make it happen. And in the absence of that, right now, I am de facto pushing in, helping. People are rolling up their sleeves in whatever way they can to help with things that need doing. And also, we are all eager to fill the mathematics department chairperson when there's an opportunity to do that. So that is a math update.
Thank you. I think there are questions maybe from the board. Any questions?
Yeah. Thank you. So I guess I'm confused about the mathematics chairperson, only because, right, I understand that you can't fill the role right now, but wouldn't we just plan to fill the role for next year, like is there a plan for that?
Yes. It's mid-year right now, so schedules are set, so the retirement happened mid-year. And so it would require redoing teaching loads and schedules and giving a teacher giving up a class. Next year, that's a different story. It is a clean start. There's the design of a master schedule. We can allocate people differently.
Yeah, it's a great question. In this report that's here in the public record, that bottom line there, the math department chair not filling that, I would look above for the expansive team that's now rolled up its sleeves, working with Melissa Szymanski on these issues. And so we've actually kicked up the pace, kicked up the work, and it's well more than what that 0.2 equivalent would be. And it's really trying to build on the work of Dr. Stevens, but say right now, in the absence of that, we have urgency. We have heard it, and Melissa knows that urgency, I know that, and so I think, again, up above under finalization of advanced placement criteria, all of those staff rolling up their sleeves is key. And the loss of instructional time later is a dilemma, but again, if we don't pull people together to work collectively, we don't get there. And many other districts, other systems, you get a trade-off of maybe 70-30. And I'm not advocating, but we got to do some serious professional learning support. And the good news is people have rolled up their sleeves and said yes. So I just want to, touch base on that. I know there are other questions.
Yeah, no, I had a follow-up question for that. Just because in reading it, and your presentation was lovely and very informative and helpful, it seemed like, rightfully so, we have a really important focus on 5 through 8 right now. And we have those players rolling up their sleeves around algebra and the sequencing, because we've had some real not great math scores that we have to contend with. But I guess my concern is that math is a K through 12 spectrum, and 5 through 12, and the high school math has had issues as well. And if we don't have a department chair, and we don't have that scaffolding K through 12, where are we going to get the incremental change that we want to see? And it makes, I think, for the community, and I've been receiving texts all night about this, the fact that there isn't interest in department chair work, it feels like there's a lack of leadership coming from the teacher's realm, not yours. People see that you're engaged, but I think there's a concern among the faculty, among the families, that we're not seeing that.
So I can speak to that. I actually don't see that at all. I see a faculty that is deeply engaged and deeply interested in this work. Andy and I have started having conversations at the high school level, and thinking about middle school mathematics as part of a continuum is absolutely right on. So Amy and I have started having conversations about math at the elementary and thinking about program, and then Andy and I most immediately about course offerings, placement decisions, and what the continuum will look like there. Angela has just begun with us, and she has essentially cleared her schedule to be able to be helpful. She's coveted regionally, and she's phenomenal, and the response that we received underscores that. She will help us think through some progressions, and that will be not just middle school.
So you're saying she's starting with middle school, but then we'll see it in the high school and the elementary as well?
We have to start middle school. That's where there's the urgency right now.
It's a brilliant question. I think it's from the middle out. So I think it's the middle school right now is where we have our greatest need. But what I'm very encouraged by this in terms of the energy that's here, and I'd urge families, parents to say, yes, we want that chair, but right now please look at this is a groundswell of work from where you need it, and then get the middle school understanding then what's coming to them, because part of these conversations is as the students arrive in 5th grade,
Absolutely.
what more do we need? And that becomes a peer-to-peer
It's the
type of
backward mapping and the
conversation.
forward mapping.
But then looking up. So I think the best things you just heard, and I know you get it because you're an expert on this, is Amy now rolling up her sleeves to say, what are you hearing at the middle school that needs to flow up? Now, we're not flipping a switch here, right? But at least, and then similarly from Andy looking down, and again, if the math chairperson has 0.2 of their life for this, I mean, we're at 0.6, 0.8 equivalent in terms of saying assistant super, roll up your sleeves, get involved with the team to facilitate.
no, it's important. It's essential.
That's going to carry over because this is an area of great need, and it's definitely K-12.
And I'd really like to put people's mind at ease around the teacher agency part of this. There is full collaborative forward movement on all of this. Our teachers are concerned, our families are concerned, I'm concerned, the board is concerned. We are all on the same page. We all want to do better on behalf of kids, and so as it pertains to the mathematics department chairperson, as we move into next year, there is full intention to make sure that we have a mathematics department chairperson. Right now, structurally, it's tricky over the next few months, and that's simply because it would require people to give up a class. And again, everybody is on the same page and working together very well, and as you can see from the progress, there's a lot of movement in a lot of places.
That's exciting. When you talk about the outside consultant coming in, and we have FastBridge, and we have the Freckle pilot, how are we assessing the effectiveness of these various programs? Like, what mechanisms are in place now so we can mark whether or not they're effective?
So one of the things that we needed to do when we brought the pilot on board is really think about what are the pieces that what are the pit stops along the way for the check-ins that we would expect people to be doing. So right now, pit stop 1 is, did you get trained, did you get in?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's the challenge, though, too, right? The implementation, so it actually sticks, right?
Exactly.
And we get to see the outcome
Exactly.
change.
And so it's more of a think tank right now for the people who are implementing to think about the pros and the cons. And then at different checkpoints that we've actually had to identify along the way to be able to do this pilot, which, by the way, is like it's not an inexpensive product line, and they have given it to us for free for the remainder of the year. I was able to negotiate that, which was great. So as part of their onboarding process, we did have to put some of those things in, like who's involved, exactly when are these meetings happening, what are the dates of the check-ins, what are the successes that you're anticipating seeing. But our team really has to just process it. Like, what are we seeing that is value add to MTSS? What are the pros and cons? And what do we think about this as an intervention resource? And what do we think about this as a repository? There are other repositories. The reason that I liked this one for us to explore is that it is a fully integrated product with things that we're already using regularly, and it's strong. So it's TBD.
Great. No, and you'll give us the information about the effectiveness of these programs and how they're working, if you're going to continue or discontinue them based on student outcomes. That's wonderful. Can we turn, I don't know, are there other questions? I have some more questions about just the algebra piece. I've been hearing from different families, and here's the question that I keep hearing. How does the district ensure that grades and assessment scores are reliable and comparable across students? And that there are clearly defined cut scores or ranges, are there clearly defined cut scores or ranges so families can understand how differences, such as a 90 or 95, can affect placement decisions?
Okay, so that's a multi-part question, but I'll break it down. So the first is the building levels are working on their grading practices. And so they, in terms of the department being on the same page around grading, when we're thinking about between teachers, between classes, that has already been in motion at the building level, at the middle school and the high school. So that's step one. The second thing is around making sure, I'm just losing my
The
thoughts.
cut scores, like people are really
the cut
curious,
scores.
like how
Yeah.
do you know?
So we can't yet. We really need to look, at the cohort as a whole, and we need to look at the areas where they are succeeding and the areas for growth in terms of their readiness. So it is very rare that a district would put definitive cut scores at an elementary school or a middle school where it's a non-elective based, because there are a certain number of students, there's a certain performance of each cohort, which can vary from one year to the next. We have a certain number of teachers, we have a certain number of places for courses to be taught in a schedule, a certain number of seats in a class contractually, lots of different complications.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is we need to look at the cohort. If we have outliers, if we have 80% of our kids here and 20% here, that would tell the story of a need for a certain amount of sectioning differently than it would if we had like a 50-50 split, right? So we really have to see student performance over time, and from there, decisions will be made based on the percentages that were identified around some of those cuts. So it is not typical for a district at a middle school or an elementary school level to say this is a magic number, for example, because you could conceivably end up with a class of pre-algebra 8 of 3 kids, and everybody else could go into algebra 1.
No,
So
I understand that, but can I just finish for a second?
Yeah, I want to clarify. Big change here is instead of 1 or 2, it's up to 5 or 6 indicators.
No, I understand that,
and
but you have
that's
to
a big
remember this
step
is a 7th grade class that has just gone through a cut score on this Renaissance Star of 90, and that
Right, and
has
that's-
left kids in and out on a very, very close rim.
Right, and that's
So I
why
think you have
that's all
families
changed.
not necessarily trusting the process, and when there are not clear numbers here, one has to wonder, and trust me, I have twins, that one twin could have a 91 and one could have a 92, and that could be the difference whether they be placed in these classes or not. So I think that is a concern, that what will it actually shake out to look like for who has access to these classes.
Yep. So,
and we'll just have to be left to wonder. I think that's a hard for parents to understand.
if I'm not mistaken, though, the example that you provided, for me, it's registering not for Algebra 1, but it's registering for the anomaly of that enrichment class that was offered.
Yes, but this is also their recent past experience.
Right, which is a fair concern, and also totally separate than how we handled algebra.
if I can help.
And enrichment will not be offered next year.
No, I understand, but I also do understand that this past year with the algebra placement, there was a tremendous amount of
Right,
issues
and
that occurred throughout the summer. I heard from a lot of forthcoming 8th grade parents about that. So I just want to make sure that we really are crystal clear on all of these ahead of time in terms of criteria and benchmarks and whatnot, so that nobody is left confused and having to appeal across the summer. I mean, I think we had to ask Jocelyn Perez to come in and do extra scheduling. Like, if we can prevent all of that this year, that'd be phenomenal.
Yes, yes, and yes. So I think totally say what happened last year cannot happen again, period. Can't happen again.
Absolutely.
Let me finish. And it's a great presentation here, and Catherine is right in your engine room professionally. There are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 indicators to use as opposed to 2.
Multiple, much better.
And it's bringing multiple things, plus then there's a review. So there's really the 6 to say, then let's take that look in the quarter 4, and May is underlined. So even if there's a fall off, but it's looking all that. Now here's the forward challenge for Hastings. We should have data protecting student privacy on how different students do. Other districts have that.
Yes, this
So
is very
when you
true.
get in discussions with families about, is this the right, now, it would be quite robust and state-of-the-art to have these 5 to 6 used. So we're matching up. So again, last year we're not doing that again. That was bad. Hear me say it. Now we're going to try and get to the better place. But then to have, going forward, data so we know, and then also can, if need be with certain families, say, I know you want Janie or Johnny to do this, but here's what we know from running longitudinal data as to how students tend to do. Other districts do have that, and it helps. And so we got to get there. So these are great critical points you're raising.
And then to that point, I just had another question. So when you're thinking about all of this, what analysis has been conducted to ensure these criteria do not produce disproportionate outcomes for students with disability, ENL students, or other historically underrepresented groups? Because I know that's always a concern, especially when you look at that data across the middle school.
It was actually a very big part of our conversations at the table. And so as part of our discussions, we had an ENL person at the table, we had a special ed provider at the table, and we worked through some of those scenarios. And we were thinking about, you know, if it actually was a very large part of the groups determining why certain things were worth certain percentages. Because we wanted to make sure that there was not any kind of concern for access, and we wanted to make sure, even with STAR, you know, are we making sure that the students are receiving who are Spanish speakers, are they receiving that in their language, right? So that was actually very much a part of our conversation. So being able to identify the weights of certain things was also done centering our diverse learners and thinking about different types of learners and where they might excel and where they might be more vulnerable, but it has nothing to do with their math. It just has to do with being able to respond to certain content. Are we making sure that we're accommodating on the assessment, right? So these were part of the discussions that were happening.
And also thinking about instruction across the grade too, because I know different classes have different instructional experiences, and factoring that into the placement. Because I know in the beginning of the year, some classes had many substitutes, some had the same teacher throughout the year, like those kinds of inconsistencies. I'm just curious, like how that is going into the sense making.
Well, I think we need to run the process, and really what this is all about is it's around learning. And we want to make sure that wherever students are, we are doing the best we can to meet them where they are. We also want to make sure all of our kids have a high ceiling, and that if there is what you've just spoken to should already be accounted for through the MTSS process. So if we're not seeing students that are performing on content, if there have been gaps in certain areas and there's content that's being missed, there is a process for making sure that we're providing some accelerated remediation around that as well.
Thank you.
So just to follow up, to be clear, so we're not going to see the what you had asked Catherine about understanding what the cutoff is, or like what that score is. That's not going to get posted.
It's not getting posted until we have all of the data for the cohort. We have to understand who our learners are, and then we will build for the learners. So unlike how they handled math enrichment, they said, this is the magic number. If you hit the number, you're in. It's different. So this is our cohort of learners. Here they are in terms of their academic performance. Now let's think about how many sections do we need? What should the criteria be for the selection process, given the fact that this is our cohort of learners and this is their readiness? So what we're doing is, rather than saying, here's the box, can you enter the box or not? It's, here's the learners, what boxes do we need to be able to provide the best pathways for them, right? And making sure that we are thoughtful in who is accelerating and how, so that they have the prerequisite skills.
So it's a much more intensive but student-centered approach. And the risk, and I'll say it, is you don't want, I mean, Melissa put it beautifully. Here's the box, hit the box. We're too small to operate that way. That's what we did last year, and that's what a lot of districts do. Rather, let's figure out what's the multiple ways that are student-centered. The risk in that is there is a certain level of understanding of math once you move up, that if you don't have that, be it basic skills and all the rest, that you fall short. And that's where the other districts who have longitudinal data have a leg up on us. We got to get there, right? Because, so this is fast work. I hope you're hearing, this is big progress. We're not there yet. But, you know, so anyway, sorry, keep going.
No, I interrupted you, please.
No.
I guess the thing that I'm struggling with, and again, maybe I don't understand this as well as I should, but if I'm a parent and my kid advances to algebra or takes 8th grade math or whatever, I would want to know why, right? And I understand that it's more complicated than that. Like, but I just feel like people want to know, like, all right, an 88 or an 89 or 90, 91. They're comforting things, right? Because at the end of the day, like, I know because of this. Otherwise, I feel like it's hard to, and again, I understand the logic of what you're saying, but I also feel at the same time it's kind of hard to justify if you can't quantify it.
But I think we will.
Okay.
And then Melissa will correct me. We're thinking out loud here, but just
Right.
the two of us.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
having a meeting in front of
We will
you.
be able to quantify it.
We will. But it's,
We have to have, so all of the things that were outlined in terms of the placement criteria, we will be able to quantify it. It's just, we have to also see where our cohort is.
But you'll be able to quantify it post-decision, not pre.
Yeah, like you'll eventually like say like, all right, you didn't get in because you didn't get a X.
But then also, then how do you explain that to this? I mean, I also hope, I think there's a lot of confusion around this. It'd be really, really helpful if the middle school offers some sort of meeting for parents to discuss this. And there's also some conversation with the students so they understand the processes and protocols around this. It doesn't need to be a mystery, right? It can be a point of conversation and learning for all involved about, where we're going, strengths and weaknesses.
so two things, and we met with the PTSA SEP today virtually. On March 24 is the next forum, and we're thinking of making that a math forum.
That's a great idea.
And that's not far away. We had talked about that earlier today. This is such a big topic, a central topic, and then also within the middle school itself, Dan and Lauren, their leadership on this right now in the sense of communication. So I think there are multiple steps. So yes.
Yeah, and I mean, you can see too, because Dan and Lauren have done so much work on this. They're also interim. We don't have a math department chair. So much then rests on you, Dr. Szymanski, which is a challenging place to be for you, but also for the district, I would say.
We're moving, and we're moving really well. And I'm really proud of our teachers. And I'm really proud of our administrators. Interim or not, everyone is locked arms on this and wants to do right by kids. So,
I have a question regarding, from what I'm hearing, is that the criteria will be disclosed or given out, be more transparent after the cohorts are placed. And so that just sounds a little troubling, but I understand. Is that because of teacher capacity?
it's partially due to teacher capacity. So for example, we wouldn't put 50 kids in a class, right? And also, it has to do with, but the primary driver is student readiness. So we have a certain budget, and we have a certain number of teachers, and we have a certain number of students, and we have a certain number of seats that can be in a particular class. So when we look at how students are performing within the cohort, we have to make decisions about how many of them, the classes will be the pre-algebra and how many will be the Algebra 1. We have the ability to be as flexible as we want about that. So again, this is not the same as whether or not how enrichment was handled at the building level, which is like, if you hit this number and you were this number of kids, like this is it. We're only taking this number. That's not what this is. This is legitimately looking at our cohort, looking at student performance. Yes, we have X number of teachers and we don't want to put 40 kids in a class. Then we could always convert a class into an Algebra 1 or into a pre-algebra, depending on what we're seeing from our learners. And so what those metrics will end up doing is it will show us the span of let's say like 100 kids, like we can see those students along a continuum. When you take all of those metrics into consideration, there's a performance, an overall performance of a student, right? There's an overall performance relative to the other students in the cohort. And so that will help us in thinking through where there is the skew, meaning do more kids need this, do more kids need that, and we will then design for them. So I feel like that's, it's not as hard and fast as like, you must hit this number. Right. It's not as anxious as that. It's like, let's see where our learners are, and then let's build for them. We have the staff we have, and we have flexibility to be able to convert this section to that section. But we need to do that in good conscience, knowing that students have the prerequisites they need to be able to then acquire the next level content.
I appreciate you explaining that. So I guess my next question would be, like, if I'm looking at this in 3 years or in 2 years from now, is there a path where we are able to have enough of this information where we could at some point establish this and create that level of consistency, not based necessarily on the cohort, but based on who we are as a district?
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
My hope is to move as many students as possible to algebra.
Sure.
Right? Like an algebra for all is a dream. Like that would be ideal. And also thinking through our continuum in general all the way through the high school so that we shift some of the very real anxiety around this, right? It's honored. But to find better ways to do that. So, yes, I think it's a couple of things. So by strengthening our continuum and strengthening our program, and that will therefore strengthen student performance, which will better position students earlier with prerequisites they need in terms of content understanding and mathematical practices to be then able to be well positioned for that Algebra 1 content, right? So that's the ideal. So to answer your question, yes, my hope is that over time we are seeing some very concrete shifts in performance, both through what's happening in the classroom and on the state assessments and on the diagnostic screeners and all of it, and triangulating all that. And that's the goal. But to get there, we need to strengthen our continuum, and we need to strengthen our student performance.
So it would be really cool if you could do a deep data dive for those children that are struggling. Those, you know, if we're aspirationally in the next 5 years trying to move to Algebra 1 for all, and you look at those cohorts of students that are struggling and backward map their assessments, because you have the state stars, you have the state scores and the star assessments, you can really begin to look at patterns and trends and say, oh my goodness, this cohort of students hasn't learned fractions or whatever it might be, and then begin to backward map that from elementary school to here, right? Is that really what you're saying, like the end goal is for all of this?
Yes, and we have to strengthen the pockets where we are falling short.
And you can see that with the data that we have.
And again, we have exceptional educators who are firmly focused on children. Professional learning is critical, and being in a room together is critical, and making sure we have the right resources is critical, right? And that might mean a redesign of what we're working with. Like right now we're using big ideas in the middle school. Yeah. We're on a journey. I'm completely comfortable with us using data and research and also review to make sure that we are using the best resources to move our students forward. So it's not only our continuum, it's not only professional learning, like what do we have on hand and to what extent is it best suited in terms of the standards that students have to reach. And all of that said, there is no magic pill of curricular resource, right? The best is when teachers have strong professional expertise to be able to think about how to actualize instruction towards those standards and reach all of their learners.
Melissa, could I just, when you say continuum, is that what Catherine just described? Like back, because I kind of related more to how she described it.
Yes,
like
the progression.
8th grade, but you need 4 years in advance.
That's
you
right.
need to know this solidly in order to
That's
progress.
right.
Okay, so that's continuum
Yes.
when you talk about, okay.
Yeah, and continuum can also be used when you're thinking about the course offerings moving through. But yeah, in this case, it's like, what is the journey of what students are learning over time? Where might there be gaps or inconsistencies? And how do we do better with that? And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, where you see in districts where you have students successfully get grades ahead of where you might typically expect them, it started, so let's say it's a 7th, 8th grade. Tough news is that started in 2nd grade. And if it's not started then, you're not going
Right.
to get there.
Right, right.
And then if you
Yeah.
do, you have this false hope, and there's a fall off. So fortunately, we do actually have a lot of good work to build on. And in a sense, the absence of Dr. Stevens right now is kind of in the vacuum, have stepped in a whole team, many more people and energy on this to get the middle school better understood, get it rolling, and then say, though, and I said earlier, who's coming up through the pipeline? What do they need? And then work down so it gets better, and then up into the high school,
Right.
if that's helpful.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yep.
I just have one more question regarding the longitudinal data that the other districts have that you stated. How long is that data, and where do we have to get that we would have? How long before we have good longitudinal data on this that we can say that we're?
I mean, some of it is kind of right there to systematically gather it and see, and we can already track that. I mean, some of the double Excel, we can go back and look at that. And actually, those are very small numbers in a small district, so I have to be cautious because there's only 7 or 8 children a year. So we can understand already how some did, so you could take time to go back and look at that. But some of that is once students are into these different opportunities, then tracking how they're doing and gathering it and looking at it.
Tracking it from our new...
some of it could be retroactively.
Algebra 1.
Yeah.
But you could track it using the Renaissance Star, too.
Say that again,
You could track it using the Renaissance Star, too. You could probably ask them to do some of that work for you.
Is
Yeah,
STAR the
and-
same as Renaissance Star?
Yes,
You can
so,
use
yeah,
the
Renaissance,
full
yeah,
name.
yeah.
But
Renaissance Star.
thankfully, Melissa brought that to our district about 5 years ago now? But that's a really great way to track trends over time.
Yeah, we didn't have a diagnostic screener when I came. I think they tried Ames Web for a little period of time. It was not well received, and then unfortunately for Ames Web, they had a data breach. There was a lot of drama around that, and rightfully so. People got nervous, but districts have to have a universal screener, and Renaissance Star is fabulous. And one of the first things I did is bring a team together to make sure that we had that in place. We were between a couple of different things, but this really is, it is the gold star. I mean, it's excellent.
Just, I don't know if it's related, but the intervention specialist or whatever that we were trying to hire for that we didn't get, what impact does that, not filling that position, have on the work you're talking about?
It's related and yet separate. So the work continues, and we're going to make sure that we are doing our very best to pick up kids along the way and provide them with differentiated support. It's requiring us to think creatively, even around scheduling. So I know that Dan Waldeck is exploring the possibility of what's called a win block, what I need. And that's something I actually put into place in my old district, my former district as well, because it allows you, if there is a block of time across a day that is for intervention, where students can receive intervention, they can come in and out of servicing more flexibly. They can go into servicing if they aren't in servicing without massive schedule disruptions. You can redeploy personnel more strategically so that people are available during a period of time, so somebody else doesn't have to pick somebody up at another point in time. So it is likely, since we're unable to currently fill that, it is likely we will redeploy that position to a different type of intervention need, or whatever the case may be, maybe even in the literacy area. So, every teacher is a teacher of literacy, including math teachers, because of the word problems. So that's a long answer to your question, but basically it's an alongside problem, but it's not standing in our way of moving things forward. And it's being addressed creatively through thinking about scheduling opportunities to pinpoint targeted support as we move forward. Thank you.
I know it's a lot. Thank you for explaining all of this. And I'm appreciative that you're going to talk about this with the, focus on this with the PTSA, because I'm certain, you got some texts, I got some texts, Everyone's texting us. So I'm glad that parents are going to be able to, kind of ask these same questions. Or they could just come to a board meeting.
That's right,
like
too.
you guys.
They're healthy questions, and it's an important area of focus.
This is a huge undertaking, but I think we all agree that it's so necessary, and it's kind of a relief to kind of start to see a roadmap and where we are here and back here and up here, and thank you. Going on, okay?
Yep.
All right, so we're supposed to hear from Jean about a student support services update, but she's not with us here tonight.
Yeah,
so we'll
let me
do that
explain,
another-
and that's why Melissa D. left. We're fine, but we may have some freezing rain north of us, and I just didn't want to have Jean dealing with that, and then Melissa D. dealing with that. So that's also I've been tracking here on the phone. We'll be fine down here, but just that
Yeah.
up there, so.
Okay, let's move on to the business items. Items 1 through 7. Anybody have any questions? Can I have a motion to accept business items 1 through 7?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I guess we should keep track of this. Oh, okay.
Cool.
That's so nice.
Cool.
Very nice.
That's a technical term. Cool.
Okay, then let's move on to the personnel. Consent agenda
You
items.
skipped 7B.
You have to do 7B.
Say that again?
It's in the electronic agenda, 7B. I don't know if it was in the printed.
It's not.
Okay, 7B. It's,
Why don't you do it?
well, no, I can't
you
because
can't.
you're voting on my decision.
Oh. Oh, I hear you. Sorry about it. Read this out loud?
Well, I think all you do is ask for the same, ask for,
A motion to approve 7B.
thank you.
Okay. Okay, can I have a motion to approve 7B?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
I would just do it in the normal way. I think
Okay.
relations down.
Yeah. Just read the.
Yeah, just, what are we voting on?
descript-
What are we voting on, Jody?
The title of it.
What are we voting on?
The title of the description of the...
We're voting on a grievance from the HTA. The board reviewed the position of both parties and deliberated therein. Keep reading. It's resolved that the Board of Education of the Hastings and Hudson Union Free School District hereby denies the Stage 3 grievance dated January 14th, 2026, consistent with the decision dated February 10th, 2026, which is approved herein and directs the district clerk to issue said decision to the superintendent of schools and the HTA. Can I have a motion to approve? The wording is weird, isn't it? To
Put it in the record, maybe?
Sure, to put in the record the vote of the board on this grievance.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks.
Moving right along. This is on to personnel. We'll have a consent agenda on appointments, amendments, and resignations. A motion to approve these?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes, or does anyone have a discussion of the minutes from
I make a motion to
the January
approve.
27th meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't do so moved.
Second public comment. Would you like to speak? Let's do an agenda review for the upcoming board meeting.
And it's good we're looking, because we list the instructional budget as the 3rd, but that should be the 17th. Is that correct, Maureen? So we'll fix that. So the proposed instructional budget will be to you on the 17th, not the 3rd of March.
Great.
And we will do, as I mentioned in the report, we'll give you an update on the wrestling situation on the 3rd. And there was another item or two there as well, but we'll get back to that. And that's a good time for you to bring questions as it related to tonight's detailed budget presentation.
And were we going to have, there's two questions. One is, were we going to have the principals talk to us about their visions for their school and their budgets? Did we talk about that?
Last year, that was part of the instructional budget presentation. We've actually done that the last number of years, so that would be what they do as part of that. On the 17th, we had done that same design. It's a great idea. We had done that same design last year, certainly, and in the past, but definitely last year. So you'd have the 3 there presenting
And then in
aspects.
terms of the budget and our communication with the community, I know we had played with different ways to outreach about our budget meetings. Like we had talked about having some type of forum. I didn't see that here. Are we going to do a forum or are we not? I just wasn't sure.
I'm not sure that we need to do a forum. I was a proponent of that. Although I do think we need to be in a space where we're talking. Well, the thing about a forum is that then the public can ask questions.
I know, just to give them a place and space to ask questions. I just wasn't sure how we wanted to handle it. Or is there a way to like make a board meeting more interactive? I don't know.
Serve food.
Say that again. Say it.
Yes, the PTSA one is later. Is it the next one? It's at April or May.
Oh, could we just open that up to the community?
Oh, yeah, that's wide open.
So then if we just advertise it to a larger body.
Yeah, it's designed to be
Great.
interactive.
Well, that's what I think we should do. I
Yeah.
think we should
Yeah, and they're-
advertise that PTSA meeting because it's not just for the PTSA.
No, but for all the
school
community members.
I really think it's important to get the.
And I think our current mayor will probably help us spread that information.
Yeah, and
Yes, perhaps.
You can share.
yeah, if you as a board endorse that, it's before the public vote. It's when all the hay's in the barn. I mean, we've done all the presentations.
And what's
it's
the
all
date
there.
of it again?
I'd have to look it up.
Could we do it at the community center so it's like super accessible?
Well,
fancy.
Or am I pushing it? I'm just pushing it, aren't I?
Well, the upside here is we can manage the tech side here very
Okay, sorry.
well. And
Oh, and the parking. Sorry, I
all
take
the
it back.
rest.
I was just trying to make it easy.
yeah,
What's the date, Bill?
I'm looking it up.
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me. We'll
Oh, that's great though. Let's merge the two.
yeah, and they're great partners on advocating, pushing
Okay.
it out. They help manage questions.
Yeah, it'd be a win-win.
We'll get that date. I just don't have it in
Okay,
front
I
of me.
think we'll get that date and then we'll make it public soon and early and often. All right.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's great. Board comments?
It's May 12th.
Not May.
May 12th.
March?
Well,
We can't do that. The PTSA thing is May?
That's when it's scheduled. We can modify it. We'll talk with them
Move it
about
to
moving it
Now,
earlier.
that's way too close to the budget vote.
That makes me nervous.
Yeah, that they had designed it that way. We'll
Really needs
pull
to
it
be
back.
before we vote to approve the budget.
Yeah,
It needs to be before the
Yeah, we
board
can bring
approves
it
the
back into,
budget.
yeah,
we can bring it back into April.
that's good.
Okay. Any other board comments? DW, were you going to say something?
I was not. Tonight.
Let's leave it that way. I said let's leave it that way without Dave having a comment.
Okay.
David?
Oh, my God. Anyone? Okay. Then, I have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.